Hello everybody, welcome along and back we are for Jackson Page against Mark Selby, the second quarterfinal here. Apologies, there's a little bit of a delay because the second one has started pretty much since the first one is finished, and after having a brilliant blockbuster of a battle out there, we're about to find pretty much the same here, as it is Mark Selby against Jackson Page in a safety battle for now, as Selby there straight away giving up the positional side of things onto Page there. And Jackson will have quite a lot of room and plenty of reds to try and work with. But for now, we have to find out what the extent of that's going to be. Very much looking forward to this quarterfinal. Probably was the one that I anticipated the most, of course, until the brilliance of Watchalong against Luca Brissell. It is now up to Jackson Page and Mark Selby to try and potentially live up to the expectation and produce something worthy of a quarterfinal performance. Are we going to see a decider here? Let's wait and see. For now, what we're seeing is Mark Selby losing his chalk and potentially losing control of the initiative that he's had in the safety battle. Right now finds himself and the cue ball quite far from the other red, so probably he's going to be on the cushion here. So it's an important shot coming up for Mark Selby, and potentially will play into cushion first there, send the cue ball up towards the top part of the table. Felicia says hi and low. And yeah, well, in terms of score prediction, I haven't had time to do that in the chat, but I will as soon as we get a break in between the first frame. I will go for Selby to win this one. I'm not going to go for us to have another decider, but I think it will be quite close. I think it is going to be Jackson Page to win by 5 frames to... Mark Selby, sorry, to win it by 5 frames to 3. The reason I was talking about Jackson Page is because he gets the chance of a break that probably will end on the value of a single point. Yes, he doesn't manage to land on the black here into the right corner, and it's probably everything for him to do after this one. Can try and send the blue up towards the green pocket there and just land the cue ball in behind the brown potentially, but let's wait and see if he can do that. For now, he'll just have a shot at the brown here and try and have the cue ball in behind the yellow there, and nice shot there. So certainly the players have been taking the safety battle to Mark Selby. From what I've seen, Liam Highfield tried to do that. In the end, he failed. Wu Yize certainly been dominating yesterday against Mark Selby in terms of the safety of late, but his amount of mistakes have been very, very costly to him. And right now, it is Selby's show that he can try and put up after, you produced a brilliant comeback against Wu Yize, losing the opening frame, in the end winning 4 out of remaining 5. And of course this time it is the best of 9, first to 5 frames here. And very much looking forward to see the best of Jackson Page. It's the first time I'm actually going to see a full match of him performing after he's managed to knock out the highest seeds of the tournament. The Neil Robertson, the former winner here, the winner last year, managed to defeat Wu Yize, another player that is out. So we're going to have a brand new final in comparison to the last year. And as I mentioned a couple of times, we're going to have a brand new final in terms of the ones that we didn't have any of the players featuring in throughout the first 3 tournaments, with the players that have already been knocked out. And Mark Selby on paper, of course, will be a massive favourite for the tournament title, with the highest seed Ding Zhuowei being the last one knocked out, which makes Selby the last highest seed, the highest seed in the ranking title. Of course, being only 2 players from the top 10, him and Mark Cullen, yet to feature against Elias Lesser. The player has managed to knock out to Jot Chomp there, so certainly a lot of action happening throughout this tournament, but it's a brand new match and it's a brand new style of play here. As for now, once again, it is Mark Selby trying to dominate the safety side of things, sending the cue ball very close to the yellow there. In the end, will come up beneficially there for Selby. And Jackson Page now has only managed to score 6 points, 4 of them coming as a foul shot from Selby. That he didn't manage to judge the power perfectly, but in the end, it was all about not giving up the position side of things, which, to be fair to Page, he has already done twice. But Jackson hasn't managed to take advantage of either of those occasions. So, a little bit of early observation on Jackson Page against Mark Selby, especially if you take into account what we've seen from Page and Selby throughout this tournament. Wu Yize has been playing some of the good stuff against Mark Selby, but he's managed to come through to it. Not necessarily playing his best. Was absolutely dominating Li Pei-fan the round after that, so in the round 4, and probably did around the same against Liam Highfield, producing a couple of centuries in the progress as well. So he hasn't had a bad start to the campaign, but he also didn't really start in any of those matches, apart from Li Pei-fan, which, to be fair to him, it was all about his opponent making mistakes throughout every single one of those frames. So that hasn't, sort of finished for him perfectly. And in the end, it is Mark Selby that is looking to do some damage now to Jackson Page, which the player that we're going to talk about right now, the player that has had a brilliant encounter against Sean Murphy yesterday and managed to come through a really tough decider. Was winning by 3 frames to 1 there, so it could have been Murphy winning 3 frames on the bounce himself. In the end, it hasn't happened, and all of a sudden, we find ourselves with the Jackson Page against Mark Selby battle. And of course, until then, the round before then, we had Jackson Page dealing with Neil Robertson, which was very difficult as well for him. But in the end, managed to knock out the world number 3 and the highest seed in the tournament, with him being the winner of last year's campaign. As on the current table, it is still a battle that you could certainly call a Mark Selby battle. The safety side of things, with pretty much no open reds to try and land on. The cue ball is going to travel a long distance to get to at least one of those, as it is Selby that is going to be going down for the shot. So we'll just try and catch the right-hand side of one of those reds closest to the cue ball and send it down the table and back towards the bulk area. Has got one of the reds that he's put very close to the pocket itself there, but in the end it is very close to the side cushion as well, which means it's not going to be a ball to access here for Jackson Page. And we're about to see just how much can he do from this, and the position that he finds himself. Of course, sponsored by Ron Skinner and Sons.co.uk. The sticker that has actually fallen down from him. How you doing? Happy days? Well, doing good after, the 4-hour clash that we had before. And now we're going to see something of a similar shot here from Jackson Page that goes into the red that I mentioned. In the end, probably doesn't do a lot of damage there to Jackson himself. But yeah, looking forward to this, as I say. I think it's going to be a match that probably won't live up to the expectation, apart from, unlike the Joe Yulun against Luca Brissell match. As once again, congratulations to Joe Yulun, that becomes the first semi-finalist of this year's English Open. And, well, this pair is about to produce the second one. Of course, the winner will play Joe Yulun himself. And what many believe this is the sort of the favourite side of the draw for the final. And whoever will become the finalist out of Joe Yulun or Jackson Page or Mark Selby will be a massive favourite come the final itself. But until then, either one of those two players have got a lot to perform and a lot to show for their performance. As for now, Jackson finds himself with a couple of reds to try and choose from into left or right corner. So in the end, Joe Brissell didn't disappoint. Wonder how this match will turn out. Well, we'll see. I still would put Selby as a favourite, but you can't underestimate Jackson Page from what you've seen already about him. And brilliant shot there in terms of potting the red from Page, but lost the cue ball and has landed perfectly on the black ball cushion. So we'll probably use the yellow or the brown to send the cue ball up the table. and see what you can do from there. Yes, be close. I think this game is going to run into tonight, so may need to come back later. Yeah, certainly. I mean, the fact that we've had the opening match be of 3.5 hours of table time, more than 4 hours in their entirety, and in the end, Jackson Page deciding to play for the blue there, and doesn't leave anything easy for Mark Selby yet again. So let's see what he can actually try and do from here, Selby. He's got a couple of options available to him, but apart from that, I wouldn't really say he's got any attacking of those options that you can try and convert into an actual pot chance. So for now, he still hasn't scored any of the points, but his opponent has managed to pot the right 3 times there and still hasn't landed perfectly on any of the colours, as Selby finds a nice little trajectory for himself, sends the cue ball up the table and into the yellow spot. In the end, Jackson Page will try and do the similar sort of thing with the majority of the reds that you can try and play a safety from located on the left part of the table. So certainly looking forward to see how that one will go. And Jackson Page does indeed go for a red on the right side of the table, but catches it a bit too thin there. And good thing for him is he actually managed to get the cue ball somewhat safe. And the bad news is that Selby can try and actually have a go at the same red. Be quite low for the black there to make sure that he only leaves the red that he's actually trying to pot and the one along the cushion into the left corner. It's only a matter of time until we actually see one of those players go for a long pot after a long break, since we've seen the last one. And Selby will go for the long pot. In the end, decided that he wasn't really confident in backing himself too much, and screws back into the cue ball and lands it really nicely on the yellow or the blue. And this time, Jackson Page will have a similar sort of shot to his name. He's got a red that I think will go past another red and a black there into the left corner, with him trying to get the cue ball somewhat safe and in and around the sort of green pocket there. He can try and get himself ahead, and in the end will get lucky, as I said that red can go past the black, and you may as well just clip the black in the way in and get even nicer pot. In the end, it was going wide and gone off the black and into the corner pocket. And what a massive slice of fortune that is for Jackson Page. And now has got a blue to become his first colour that he'll pot in this frame. And hopefully will get himself onto the next red and try and do some more damage to Mark Selby. In the meantime, it doesn't look like that's the case, as he's landed exactly in behind the pink there. So unless he can try and see a double or the cut into the left middle, has to be the end of break on only 6 points. So far not looking as good for Jackson Page as we've seen earlier in the earlier rounds. And of course in those 2 matches against Murphy and Robertson, he managed to get himself up to a very, very quick speed there. And for now, once again, we'll ask the referee for a rest. So not often actually you see those 2 players meet each other, with probably both of them being respectful, but not necessarily being the biggest fans of each other's game. As this time Jackson Page will just play into one of those reds, try to get it somewhat close to the corner in case he actually manages to pot it, but send the cue ball up towards the area of the yellow and the brown. And once again, as he misses that red, he will give the turn back to Mark Selby. Can try and use one of those reds that he's got on the left-hand side of the table to finally have his first pot of the match here, Selby. And try and cue the white in towards the black bow area. Once again, it's quite far out there, so it wasn't too close in terms of Selby actually making that. And back to the table comes Jackson Page here. Page number 33 in ranking, so don't meet each other much. Well, certainly, and I suppose the only way you're going to do that is in the earlier stages, because you don't really see Jackson Page, with all the respect to him, as he just left a red on for Mark Selby, but is Selby going to see that red? Probably not, but he has got a plan to go into that red and try and party to finally get himself the first spot of the day. But yeah, on the page against Selby, the only way really you're going to see the world number 9 against the world number 33 is if you're going to meet him in the earlier rounds. Because I don't think, with all the respect to Jackson Page, you don't really see him in the quarter-final stage for a lot of the time. And Selby in the end goes for a shot off the cushion. He doesn't necessarily get himself on any other colour. In fact, he's probably landed as bad as it could have been, as in no man's land for the blue or the pink. Might actually be able to get through to the green there, but I'm not too sure actually how much of that will be realistic for him to try and achieve. As he is looking onto the plant of reds into the left corner, as we're about to find out if that's going to be worth it. So he's looks to be taking the green onto the middle and trying to line himself up for a red into the left corner. So for now he's fine with this one. Come on, Mark. Mohammed is back there. So he did say he was going to win it against Wu Yiza yesterday, and I wasn't so convinced after him losing the first couple of frames. But in the end managed to overcome the deficit and become the winner, even though hasn't necessarily shown the best snooker of his career. But we could certainly see some best snooker of his tournament here. There's a man for the occasion, and those two, as I say, on the previous match, those two are my highest picks for the winner of the entire title. So Selby being the comfortable first, and Jackson Page being number 2, Elias Lesser making the top 3 there, of my personal point of view. As Selby there has got a really nice shot into the reds there, so converts the plan into the left corner, lines himself up for the black into the right corner. 5-2 Selby easy. Well, we'll see. I'll be here for that. A clash between Mark Selby and Joey Long. I mean, that will be an absolute carnage. If you know anything about Joey Long and you know anything about Mark Selby, you know that that's going to be an absolute carnage tomorrow. I'm certainly here for that. But until then, Selby needs to win at least 5 of those frames to make sure that he is the second semi-finalist. And we'll have the first pairing on our hands already, with Selby starting well though in terms of his pot success, but not necessarily getting the luck that you would expected him to deserve after getting all those spots in. In the end, lines himself up for a red into the right corner, but that might be blocked off by some of the other reds, so probably is a red into the left middle or nothing. Once again, I need to see the better angle if you can see enough of the right corner pocket to try and squeeze the red into it. So obviously can't, and they're just trying to place his hand perfectly to go for a red into the left middle, potentially trying to play through the cue ball there and trying to line himself on the blue. So a very delicate shot, but in the end the one he makes and evens the points tally, 13-all. You consider yourself a self-ban? I mean, you live and you learn. You mean in this match, or you mean on the entire tour? I mean, love it always Selby. Okay, fair enough. I'm not going to join the club yet, but as I say, he is my favourite for the title. And lands himself a little bit awkward on the next red though, into the left corner. So we'll try and get that one in, and of course the cue ball line will be heading towards the bulk area, or we can try and potentially hang you for the blue into either of those middles. For now, needs to make sure the red is in, and the position should follow. I say it should follow. He's probably once again landing as awkwardly as he could on this green, and the shot of the blue into the right corner might actually not, left corner might not actually be the worst outcome for him. It's just all about if you can get the cue ball past that brown and onto the lower part of the table. And of course the shot of the blue that I mentioned, what's that going to give to Selby? Because there's not too many reds that are in open play. Of course, a lot of those have been taken out by either Jackson Page or Mark Selby already, with obviously 83 points available on the table. And that blue seems to be going a bit wide there. And he's going to miss it. And he's going to leave a shot now for Jackson Page. So the break of 19 is everything that Mark Selby can produce here. And that will end his attempt number 1. And Jackson Page will come back for attempt number 4 now. After him getting a lot of early reds. Didn't manage to land on the colour. And that time he did. Only got himself 6 points by playing the blue and running himself out of position straight away. So we'll be looking to make that a bit more significant now. As he finds himself only 6 points behind Selby. But with a couple of reds available to him. As I say, not too many of those. But the more he tries to clear up out of his way, the more he end up, the more points he'll eventually end up scoring inevitably. And for now, once again, the cue ball action on the next red is probably perfect. So Page once again puts himself back ahead in this frame with 75 points on the table. So still quite a lot of work for him to do if he wants the frame done in this current visit to the table. And that's a good start off there. Off the second red, he pushes the cue ball onto the bunch of the other two and give himself potential 16 more points to try and accumulate with those two reds. So if you are a Selby fan in the chat, it's not necessarily looking the best for you. And just as I say that, I mean, if you're a Jackson Page fan, you're probably cursing me right now because he's just missed a black of the spot into the right corner and has given a chance away to Selby after it looked like it was going to be a straightforward finish for Mark Selby here. Well, it doesn't look like now, with the black just allowing enough of the right corner pocket to be seen for Selby. Try and squeeze that red in, using the entire length of that pocket and width there. Once again, the black will follow up in the right corner, and this time it's 4 reds to try and deal with for Mark Selby. Could have been a frame to Jackson Page really early on, but instead it's looking like it's his opponent that's about to get the better of this frame. Now back ahead Selby, as it's his second visit to the table, with Page not necessarily being able to hurt anything of the 4 opening chances that came his way. Scoring 22 points after porting 4 reds there is a very, very poor result and poor percentage-wise. Selby now is looking to put himself 12 points clear with his pink, and we'll be looking forward to see which red is he going to try and line up for next. As I say, 2 reds there are not necessarily out of position, but very close to each other, and going to be an issue to try and get any of those into the pocket. And Selby does manage to do that, so he managed to cannon into those 2 and separate those apart from each other. Brilliant shot there, and of course he's about to make that 35 points if he rolls this red in. Get himself onto a pink one more time. Doesn't want to be facing too much of an angle though, and he will be, so potentially a chance to play on for the red into the left or right middle and try and do something about it. Or he can always try and go for the easier option and the easier solution for himself and leave that one till last. But of course for now he needs to make sure that pink is in, and it is. So perfect strike there from Selby. He's now 19 points clear. So those 2 reds is all he needs for the win in the opening frame. Of course, he gets those 2 reds with the colours. And you would assume those 2 being high value colours, with the cue ball being in and around the black spot. Has got himself a nice little healthy angle on this black for the line up onto in behind the red. But not too sure if he's actually got too much of an angle here. Maybe actually, in terms of the positional play, it might have been easier to play for the pink here. It will be black though for Mark Selby, so he clearly feels like he can try and go for the shot along the cushion, you would have thought, and try and hold the cue ball for the shot in that left middle. In the end, it is 49 points to Selby, 22 points to Jackson Page here. And a frame ball now for the red into the left middle. Far from easy though. Needs to make this one stick, and absolutely perfectly does. I mean, what a shot that was, and what an angle there from the camera to see that he missed the front jaw by an absolute millimeter, but still had absolutely no room for it to be any closer to the backjaw either. And it is now going to be the opening frame to Mark Selby, so it's a perfect start for him. And a start that Jackson Page hasn't seen of either Neil Robertson or Sean Murphy. His opening frame form is going to finally come to an end, with him now being behind by 34 points. So I think he'll step back to the table to try and search for those two snookers, with Selby missing the yellow and producing the highest break of the match so far, with it being 37 points. So far the best that Jackson Page has managed to produce, I should say, is the value of 9, but it's a brilliant first shot, and it's one of the snookers that he managed to produce. And it's now down to Selby to try and get himself out of trouble. So really only 4 colours for Jackson Page to try and land the snooker in behind, with the blue bean comfortably sitting on the blackboard cushion himself. Game 1 done, GG's, but certainly looks like Selby finds the way to escape from the first snooker that Page has managed to produce on him. And now Jackson's got it all to do again. So potentially aiming for this yellow into the corner pocket. So surprised to see that, I would say, with him potting the yellow. So what's he going to do now? Surely he's not going to pot the green and try and get himself 2 snookers on the last 4 of the colours. And he will, obviously trying to get the cue ball in behind the brown. In the end, doesn't manage to do that. The green will land in behind the pink slightly, but a little bit of a waste shot there from Page to pot the yellow, only to have a shot like that set up for Selby. And as long as he avoids the pink, should be comfortably going into the green there. Wasn't comfortable though, was quite close to catching the pink, but in the end, that will do Selby nicely. Still 32 points clear with 25 on the table. So needs 2 snookers now, Jackson Page, and produce that on 5 colours is not going to be easy. As I say, blue is still out of the equation. Brown needs pretty much a spotless positional shot if you want to land the snooker on that. And the pink and black being the only 2 that are quite in open play. 2 snookers again, so it means you need to get 50 there. So yeah, well, I think so. He does need 2. I'm not too sure what the point is, to be honest, but Jackson Page will need 2 snookers as Selby finds the way out of the first one. And Page there, not too bad in terms of the cue ball position, but the green will go over the yellow pocket, and surely it is going to be GG's in the opening frame. And Selby just about to put that green into the yellow pocket and make sure that we won't see any more of action in the opening frame. As he doesn't do that, so the green will stay out, and the match and the frame will continue in its current shape. I was really fancying to have Selby get that green into yellow pocket, but wasn't to be, and in the end the cue ball positioning will make sure that he doesn't give away anything easy to Jackson Page here. As he rolls the green in there, so once again, fascinating to see what the plan is for him, as he now finds himself in a really difficult situation, still needing 2 snookers on whichever colour he lands on, unless of course Selby wants to gratefully catch the black full ball there. And yeah, this has gone to a little bit of a disaster there for Jackson Page, but in the end, looks like he's actually managed to land the snooker there on Mark Selby, with the brown catching about 4 jaws there, all of them coming from the middle pocket. And if Selby can just get through to this brown, you would have thought that he can actually try and pot it, and maybe finally get us over the line in the opening frame. But Jackson doesn't think so. And I just want to double check that I'm not missing something. He is behind by 29 points, and yet he's trying to get 2 snookers on the brown, with the blue and the black being out of the equation. I mean, not too sure why you would try to do that, apart from just frustrating Selby, which it's a weird way to try and frustrate Selby by letting him into the side of game that he actually enjoys, but impossible. Selby has sat nav round table. Well, I think he's got a lot more than that. I think he's got all sorts of centres into the table. And this time he tried to pot the brown into the yellow pocket, but once again, putting a lot of distance in between those two. And Page still hasn't had enough as he comes back to the table for some more action. And certainly looking like Mr. Mission Impossible. But, you know, I could understand if he had two colours lined up perfectly so that you could try and do something with a cue ball, but certainly doesn't seem to be the case. And he's just exchanging safeties here with Selby as if he can still tie here. Not necessarily playing for snookers either. And Selby will just try and... I mean, Selby could do this all day. The reason is, the thing is, he's not even trying to send the brown towards the pocket. He's just playing a safety shot. Sort of saying, you want to try and beat me with my own spells? Try and do it. But you're not going to succeed with it. As Page will go for a good attempt, though. So maybe he's got one of those snookers in. And so there's a lot of distance there between the brown and either of the side cushions. So let's see what he can try and make out of the position that he finds himself this time around. Try and play outside the red side cushion. And maybe try and do that off two cushions if he wants to, using the black ball as the cover there, Page. So let's see if Selby's going to find his way out of here. In the end, going for a three cushion escape, and what a shot this is. Comfortably catching the brown. So all that work for Page comes undone. And what's he going to do now? He's looking onto this brown as if to say, I may as well just put you into the right middle and try and do something with the blue. You try and get to the pink with a way like that. And the line is good there, in behind the black. And once again, it's a lovely attempt. I think this time it's going to be a little bit easier for Selby to try and get, with the brown being closer to the ball carrier. And once again, a reminder that Jackson Page needs not only one but two snookers here. As he tries to play the cue ball into the brown once again, Selby catching it very, very confidently and comfortably as well. And back to the table comes Page. So just looking at the way to potentially send the cue ball down the table. And yeah, put a lot of distance there in between the cue ball and the brown. Well, it looks like he was going for looking for the brown, try and pot it, and once again does that. So two snookers to find with three colours. I mean, he's going to a little bit of a ridiculous point here, and about to reach it. And Page still being very, very stubborn there. I think you can tell something about his personality with that starting on the 6 colours. It's now down to 3 of them. The more expensive colours value is not going to do anything positive to him, because you'll need 7 points done. And Selby just rolls that blue into the corner pocket. So finally, we're going to have the end to the opening frame here. And it is going to be Mark Selby that takes it and finally get himself a first frame on the board as he rolls the pink in as well. But that's not going to matter. Jackson Page stays in his seat as he can't find snooker on the black there. And he is Mark Selby 0. Mark Selby 1, I should say. Jackson Page 0. Perfect start for the world number 9. As he finds himself in a position that, to be fair to him, he's managed to find himself for at least 2 of the times. He was facing Liam Highfield. It was a frame down. Lee Bay fan couldn't do the same to him, and Wu Yiza certainly could. So only for the second time, Mark Selby actually wins the opening frame of the 4 matches he's played in. And pot. GG's happy day Selby. Yes, certainly. He's doing everything he has to make himself the second semi-finalist. And he's 20% there. But he certainly needs to make sure he gets his game to a new level there, into the second and third, fourth frames. And I think right now for Selby, you're trying to build yourself an advantage and get yourself comfortably ahead of Jackson Page here, so that you can try and dictate the run of play. Page sometimes, and most of the time, he's still considered to be one of the most attacking players, even though I'm not too sure what we just witnessed at the closing stages of the opening frame. So the referee will just finish up setting up all the reds there. And get us in for the second frame shortly. So early observation points. Jackson Page doesn't seem to mind going into the world of Mark Selby and trying to produce a brilliant comeback of his against a player that is considered to be the king of safety shots, and you know, not necessarily bowing before His Majesty of Mark Selby, but the challenges that Page has had in the opening frame, he should have tried and converted a lot more of them than he actually managed to. So let's see if that's going to change in the second or third frame, but I certainly don't think you can wait until the third one here, because if you give a head start of 2 frames to nil to Selby, with the way he plays the game, he basically takes the sting out of the game. Majority of the time he's actually ahead and comfortably. And comfortable, especially if he's up against a player that is the lower ranking seed, with the Page certainly being that. The world number 33. But we're now ready to get the second frame underway, and Mark Selby is going to break off here. Send the cue ball onto the right part of the pyramid and try and get it in behind the yellow and on the ball cushion. Once again does that really nicely, and Jackson Page is back to the table himself after missing a large chunk of that table time in the first frame. He's now back on level terms in at least this current frame, and he's going to try and make more usage of the breaks and the chances that, you know, Selby gets away to him and gives away those chances to him, as he's now 31 points clear in terms of the break value being the highest for Selby. And once again, Jackson Page, a mistake earlier on the safety shot, catching the brown full ball under no real pressure, and Mark Selby will have a shot into the left corner, of course compromised slightly by the fact that he could actually not place his hand perfectly on the table, and can't quite pop the red anyway. So would have been on the colour had he managed to do that. Instead, still managed to get the cue ball somewhat safe in towards the baulk line. And this time it is Jackson Page that will have a couple of shots lined up into the right corner if he wants to take the attacking approach. And if he doesn't want to do that, and he feels like he just has to get through the early stages of this second frame, well then you can always try and find a better safety than the one that Selby managed to produce. And it looks like something that he's actually managed to do here, with him being snookered. You would have thought Mark Selby in behind the green and blue. So probably would expect a cushion shot to come now, with Selby playing away from the pack potentially. I'm not too sure if there is a safe spot for the cue ball to try and land on, but certainly not going to try and catch off the edge of one of those reds. In the end, goes for a straightforward shot, so just roll up to one of those reds onto the black ball cushion and get himself comfortable in terms of eliminating any sort of advantage from Jackson Page. And one thing I will say earlier on about Selby, his safety game has been sublime. I haven't seen any mistakes from that at all, and something that I thought I was actually missing from his game against Wu Yize. And he's up against a much more experienced opponent now in Jackson Page, one of the players that the TNT team has certainly called the in-form player until this match has started. And now will be looking to try and make sure that he lives up to that name. For now, he's got a couple of reds to try and choose from. He's got a red potentially lined up into the left middle, so it's an attacking option that he's got ahead of him, but it's the one that he needs to make sure he actually makes into the corner pocket, and didn't. So it will be once again a chance to Mark Selby, but With the black being covered up, the pink is available to the right corner and the left middle. The blue is of course available. And what's the introduction looking like for Mark Selby? I think he has got a red certainly into the right middle. But with the black being out of the game, has to try and land on the pink into the left middle there. And try and find himself with some sort of angle to try and go into those reds. But doesn't want the angle to be too big in case he actually misses the pot there. So looks to be fine for now, Selby. And early observation, as I say, Selby seems to have recovered entirely from misfiring yesterday to an extent. And now looking to be back to his best and playing some good snooker here. And we've seen him be quite clinical in the opening frame. You know, from the position that he's had. In the closing stage, he managed to produce a break of 37, which wasn't easy at that time. Of course, I had to mention, but maybe spoke too soon at this stage, though, as Selby will miss the pink into the left middle. So, once again, back to the table steps Jackson Page here, and now he will find himself on the attacking side of things, with him having a red into the right corner and the right middle. So, got a couple of shots to try and choose from. And only has one black into the right corner that he can try and take. But has to be perfect in terms of accusable position. And I actually don't think he is perfect on this black ball. Into the right corner. His face expression doesn't give away too much here. So, had to be perfect if he was playing for the black. And not too sure he's actually is perfect here. Maybe you'll have to go around the red there, or try and force through it. In the end, he could see enough of that black, so he's fine. And the delay was probably only precautionary there from Jackson Page, as now he's the player that has his chalk fallen off after we've seen the same in the opening frame from Mark Selby. But Selby managed to win that frame. Could it be a sign of good fortune for Jackson Page, as he's looking to be the player that will win the second frame and make it one frame each now between the two players. For now it is Page still on the break here, and how many reds of those that are very close to the black spot are actually potable into the corner pocket? Not too sure is the answer. Certainly has got 2 of those available to his name, and then anything on top of that will be a massive bonus. So for now, 16 points is the tally that he manages to score. And we'll try and play for the black once again into the right corner. I think that will be a tendency for the next couple of shots, with him trying to take one of those reds away that I mentioned. I wasn't sure if they were actually potable into the corner pocket. So Jackson Page can try and go into the bunch of reds from underneath them and try and force himself an angle on the right hand side of the red to put it into the right corner. In the end, he's gone for the switch of the play there, so has got one of those corner pockets available to him, and the reds to follow up in one of those for sure. Still will be comfortably on the black on the next shot there, on 25 points already. So the gap is 24 points with 107 still on the table, so loads of work now for Jackson Page to try and do. But he's managed to navigate his way through nicely at the beginning of his stage. And once again, 4 reds, 4 blacks means that 32 points is already achieved now for Jackson Page, with him developing more and more reds with every single shot that he plays. But that time, the red that he clear up, managed to stick to another one, so you'll have to do that one again. But until then, as I say, developing reds one by one, still has 3 more until he has to go into the bunch or into one of those 2 reds on the black cushion. So now 39 points clear of Selby, and still no sign of slowing down now from Jackson Page here. So as I say, 2 more reds into the right corner that you can try and take on, 1 more into the right middle, but for now it's going to be a little bit of a difficult shot for him to try and make from the rest, just to make sure it lands perfectly on this black after it, and has played into the black there and has actually pushed it onto the corner and onto the cushion itself. So not looking ideal, and now probably has to go for a safety shot unless he wants to take the pink into the left middle and try and make some advantage off that shot for himself. As he's 40 points clear now with 91 on the table, so with a lot of those reds actually being covered up on the cushion, all quite close to each other, not too sure that he's actually comfortable yet in this frame, and that pink will certainly make him more comfortable and give him more confidence ahead of his next couple of shots. As right now he's got a red try and line up into the right corner. Now ahead by 46 points already. Still 91 on the table, and not being so smooth with the current break now as probably Selby was in the first frame. But as long as Page makes this one work for him and count, and of course put enough points between himself and his opponent, that's all he needs to do. And it's all that he has to do in this frame now. Now we'll probably follow up with the pink into the left corner. Try and send the cue ball into those reds, and hopefully he'll land on at least one of those three. And I think the one into the right corner is going to be the most likely for him to try and land on. In the end, he didn't catch that one nicely, and he's probably going to find himself ran out of position here. 53 points clear, and only 83 on the table for Selby to try and catch up. So it's still possible, unless Page decides to go for the red along the cushion and just try and roll this one into the corner. In the end, didn't manage to do it, and it's always easier to do that when the red is exactly on the cushion, but he hasn't managed to do it, and potentially has left the same red for Mark Selby to try and play into the right corner. Let's see if Mark can make the most out of this situation. Something that, he's managed to do in the opening frame, but that one had different circumstances, with him not being any points behind at all, and actually being the one that tries to make a difference and put a lot of distance in between himself and his opponent. And for now needs to make sure he cuts the red in first and tries to land on the black there, with it being along the cushion. So let's see if Selby can actually make the break that counts for him. As I say, no colours are in massive spots of bother apart from the black, which Selby is actually taking on right now. The only available option for him now. So just play through this one, land on the red, and all of a sudden you're in with a great chance of stealing the opening frame. And the black is in, so that's one of the major issues out of the equation. He's now behind by 45 points with 75 on the table, so certainly more than enough of those. Yeah, certainly, if you're a Jackson Page fan. But it's looking good for Selby, as you would have thought that he's going to be going in the third frame now, and with all being even after him stealing the opening frame. But still, he's in this chance, and has got a couple of tough reds to try and play for here, and one of them proves to be one too many already. So after clearing a black off the cushion, looks like it was going to be issues over there for Selby. In the end, can't actually make the red into the corner pocket and leaves the same red onto the left-hand side for Jackson Page. Whilst I was watching the replay, Page actually managed to put the same red into the corner pocket. So now, surely a straightforward ending with the black setting himself up for the next red. And the following colour should become a frame ball for Jackson Page there. So what was looking like it was going to be one frame all, he's looking like he actually is going to be one frame all now. With Jackson Page and Mark Selby not necessarily producing the best snooker in either of the first two frames. I thought the safety side of things for Selby was actually decent, but in the end it was Page that got the first chance. And looks like he'll be able to finish it off now from the second time of asking, being 54 points clear. And of course the black will make it 61 with only 59 on the table for him. Game looks like it, GG's, well, certainly. And if he makes this black in, just about does there, and will line himself up for another red. So he's now ahead by 61 points with 59 on the table. So one snooker needed for Mark Selby. So Page will have to make sure that he gets one more red in, and potentially a bit more table time for himself. So for now, good pace to the start here between Page and Selby, even though the opening frame has took a long time to finish. Looks like the second frame will finish short once again, as I don't think we'll see more of Mark Selby, as he's now finds himself needing 4 snookers. In the end, he actually will step up to the table, so he'll try and do something about it. And the second frame is not quite over yet. Selby still feels like he can get something out of this frame, and lines himself up onto the black, onto the right-hand side of the table. So surely we'll try and eliminate the remaining red and give himself 1 red to try and position in between some of those colors and the cue ball. So let's see if he can actually make this one work for himself. For now, we'll play a red into the left corner and try and land himself on the pink into the opposite side of the table. So now 53 points separating. So 3 snookers to tie, it would seem, for Selby. So surely counting to get a frame ball. As now 24 points. So 47 on the table. And 35, I should say, on the table. And 47 is the gap in between the two of them. Selby needs practice, I think. Well, I don't necessarily think he's playing for practice. He's not necessarily the Ronnie O'Sullivan type of player that would go still out of the table when there's 7 snookers needed for him. Let's see if he makes this red into the corner. That'll certainly be a sign that he's not necessarily looking to get a snooker out of this situation, but he will land a snooker on this last remaining red to him. And 47 points can be cut down a little bit if Jackson Page catches the black there or misses the red in its entirety. So let's see just how much table time is Jackson Page going to get here. And enough of the right hand spin there. So it looked like it was a risky shot for Page to try and take on. Could have easily caught the black there and give away 7 points to Selby after the ones that he requires with 12. Would have cut down the number of snookers from 3 to tie to only 2 to win. And once again, Selby trying to do the same thing, running the cue ball in behind the black, putting a lot of distance there in between the red and the cushion. So decent effort. Free ball. This is what I'm saying. The only real hope for Mark Selby is going to be a chance of a free ball that if he does get, he'll be struggle for Jackson Page to try and keep up with himself, because if Selby manages to turn the momentum in his favour, you know, you give away 4 points for the foul, and with the black being very much in the middle of the table, you give away a free ball there. All of a sudden, you can actually try to tie there in the second frame. And Page certainly looks concerned, with a look on his face not necessarily being the friendliest of all. And doesn't seem to have an answer for the shot that Selby has managed to line up. And yeah, for the opening 2 frames, just because we have a delay in the game, I will say that Selby does look the better player in the safety side of things, but his long pot has been dreadful so far. And Jackson Page just managing to produce a break of 54 points. Looks like should get him over the line in the second frame, but for now has to face the cue ball, trying to send it into the reds. And of course, the reason why he's taking so much time, for anyone wondering, because he's 12 points safe there from Selby, is that should he give away a free ball, he'll be no point safe there, with the red and the black all being available on the table for Selby to try and take on. But for now, it's still decision time for Jackson Page, as he doesn't seem to make one, at least for the time being. And yeah, struggling to just find a trajectory that he can try and catch the red from. Of course, the jaw of the pocket and the pocket itself being in the way is going to be an issue. And you can't necessarily just try and hit and hope there, because the referee needs to make sure that there was some sort of effort from you to get near the red. And looks like you'll just have to play this one with a lot of left-hand side. and trying to land the cue ball in behind and in between the yellow pocket and the yellow spot itself. So 4 points certainly will go the way of Mark Selby. So he's now 2 snookers away from tying this frame and making it a respot. And it looks like the first chance will be over to him straight away, as all he wants to do is not to pot the red and cover up the left hand side of the table. Not too sure he's actually managed to do that, as the red has gone towards the left hand side cushion. So Page is certainly snookered here, but it's all about how many cushions does he need to use to get himself out of this situation. And when you talk about Jackson Page now, it is 2 snookers for Selby to tie, and oh boy, if Selby manages to somehow win this frame, which is still very much unlikely even at this stage, but if he does manage to do that, I mean, psychological blow that is going to be a massive thing for Jackson Page to try and recover from. And I don't think he'll be able to do that, at least until the interval. For now, he plays into the red there and catches it full ball. So a really nice shot at the end of it. And Selby has to do all of his work again. The good news for him is that all 6 colours are in some way, shape or form available for him to try and snooker Page in behind. So for the first time, I'll send the cue ball up towards and in behind the blue or green there, hoping that at least one of those colours will be the difference in between the cue ball and the red. Looks like that is the case though, but with a simple swerve, for Jackson Page should be able to get out of this situation and land the red really nicely. In fact, he's going to be close to doubling it in the yellow pocket, but he's going to miss it by a little bit of a margin. So still not over yet in the second frame, as Selby's reluctant to give up, and already seen why, with him troubling Jackson Page massively on the first snooker. In the end, only giving Selby 4 points there. And once again, so just a safety shot there that Selby could try and produce. And Jackson Page all of a sudden has got initiative back to him. So it was very important to try and get himself out of the snooker situation that he found himself previously. And this time, Selby finds himself snookered. So a lovely shot there from Page. And all of a sudden, Selby, after applying all the pressure at the start of it, has got some pressure applied to him. Catches the red nicely, but ultimately will leave it away into the green pocket to potentially be possible. Once again, Page just looking over to the scoreboard, making sure that he's still on the same page as the real world. I think he'll just try to stun the cue ball and send the red towards the corner pocket. And surely, if Selby has to take it out of the game, it will be frame over and frame conceded there from Selby. I'm not too sure why he's got 24 points on his name. Should have 28 there. So 43 points is the difference, but the red is probably about to disappear from the snooker table unless Selby wants to hit that one out completely. And of course, if he is still to need 2 snookers to tie, he needs to take this red with the black here. And well, I mean, he's going for the pink, so certainly looking to go back for the 3 snooker search. And that's it, time to concede. Well, no time to concede if you're Mark Selby, because not only he's not conceded, but he's refused to go for the black there, and which will mean he'll actually need to get 3 snookers once again there after potting this pink. So just looking to line himself up with a nice little angle on the yellow to try and get at least one of those snookers. And for now, 36 points behind with 27 on the table. So unless Page will catch one of the most expensive colours, it's going to be a difficult start for him. And the match time has just hit an hour after the opening 2 frames, certainly taking that time. And the second one is not over just yet, with Selby unable to line up a snooker there. So Page can try and roll the yellow into the left corner pocket surely put an end to the suffering of Mark Selby here. And it was close to doing that, but in the end, the yellow will stay out. And back to the table will come Mark Selby here. So I think it is a little bit of a revenge for the first frame. I never understood why Page was playing on with him needing 2 snookers with 3 colours on the table. Selby doing a very similar thing, although he's got more colours available to him, but also needs to have more snookers to his name. And once again sending the yellow up towards the green pocket, but the gap is exactly in between there. In between the pink and the blue for Page to comfortably see the yellow, as he doesn't seem to be happy with the scoreboard. Not for the first time we're going to see that. After Watchalong has mentioned the same thing to his referee at the match of the morning/afternoon session. For now it still is Jackson's Page frame to lose, as he's looking to get himself over the line finally. Trying to play that yellow. And getting the cue ball saved this time around, so certainly not having a pot in the mind there. And Selby has got a shot to play. Send the yellow on towards the right hand side of the table and try and send the cue ball in towards the in behind pink area. Once again unable to do that, and surely this time it will be frame conceded by Mark Selby as he leaves away a yellow into the left middle. And it is 1 frame each now after Jackson Page responds to Mark Selby winning the opening frame by taking the second frame to his name. And we're going to have a little intermission there in between the frames, as we'll be back in a couple of moments time as well. So now, after a very short bathroom break for both of the players, we are now back to action, and it is a brilliant break-off shot there by Jackson Page. Puts Mark Selby into a little bit of trouble that Mark Selby actually manages to find himself out of and bring it 50-50 battle once again on the safety side of things. So looking forward to see more of Jackson Page on the front foot though. Haven't seen enough of that in the opening 2 frames, making way too many of errors and allowing Selby to be dominating the safety side of things. When Selby actually had a chance himself, he managed to convert in the opening frame, so Page doing pretty much the same in the second frame there. And in the end, it is 1 frame each here with Selby once again getting the turn. So a couple of reds available to play a safety from. In a perfect cue ball position, you could try and land one of those into the right corner. But certainly not with the cue ball going into the reds. It would make no sense for you to try and do that. As for now, good safety there from Selby once again. And back to the page comes the turn at the table. So has been quite a slow game, which I expected Page to be against off and sort of try and put himself on the front foot. Do a little bit more than his opponent in terms of the attacking side of things, but so far he has been pretty even in the majority of those stats, as Page there catches the yellow quite awkwardly, and we'll give initiative once again back to Selby here. And yeah, playing a diagonal shot there into one of those reds, into the right corner, is an option, but that's an option that you can try and do only if you can see inside the red. But in the end, Selby went for that shot, and a very rare mistake that you can see Mark Selby actually try and make. He's gone for the red that probably wasn't visible to him, and he gave away there 5 points to Jackson Page, and more importantly, the position into the right hand side of the table. So catching the blue, obviously trying to use that red as a cushion for the cue ball to try and send it onto the black ball area. In the end, hasn't managed to do that, and puts Jackson Page right into the mix of things here in frame number 3. Once again, very important for either one of those players to do more once they get the chance within themselves. So far, both have been pretty equal in the majority of the aspects of the game. I was saying that, in the opening frame and a half, I was really enjoying the safety side of Selby's game. But that has dropped out massively in the second part of that frame. And this one is actually continued and has turned into a little bit of a calamity here for Mark Selby, as Jackson Page will find himself now on a break of 8 points and has the last red available to him. So once again has got an option of trying to roll the cue ball through there, land himself on the blue into right or left middle, or as a backup plan trying to do the same thing and screw the cue ball on towards the black ball there, give himself a nice little angle to go into the reds from underneath them. So it looks like he'll go for the black option there. Needs to go heavily into those reds, and hopefully he'll have at least 1 or 2 reds that he'll have available to him. In the end, that's about as much as he actually managed. So shot actually paying off there for Page, and something that we've seen a lot of good there from Jackson Page in the second frame. Let's see if we can try and continue the tendency in the third one and potentially get himself ahead for the second time in the match. Now Selby is behind by 29 points, and of course for that to start from a mistake there from Mark Selby, just catching the blue instead of the going for the red onto the right hand side, was a massive error for him, and it's the one that seems to be punished here by Jackson Page, at least to an extent of 30 points, with once again there Page lined up nicely on this black into the right corner. So if you just try and play into the bunch here, accelerate the cue ball massively, you're going to be in with a strong chance here to try and do something about it and send the cue ball into the reds. And what a shot that is from Jackson Page. Brilliant that is. I mean, for the first time it was actually quite nice, the execution onto the black and into the bunch of reds there. But for the second time of asking, he's managed to look that really, really nice there. And it's now 38 points for Jackson Page. And exactly the same amount of points that he's ahead now in the third frame against Mark Selby, and certainly trying to put himself on the front foot massively. You know, his safety side of things hasn't been brilliant, but his attacking side of the game certainly needs no improvement so far, with just struggling a little bit in terms of landing on one of those colours. So his positional play hasn't been the best, but it's certainly the aspect of the game that you can try and work on towards the later stage of this match. And for now, he needs to focus on the last two reds available to him. He's about to make that the first 50 plus break of this second frame, or the third frame I should say, after having that in the second frame already. And very close actually himself to equaling his highest break of the match here. That will be highest break of the match by the two players. Of course, Selby only managing 37 points in the opening frame, and that was the best he could actually try and manage. So a screw back now onto this cue ball. Send it down the table there, and try and line himself up for a red into the right middle. In the end, decided to go into the reds there, so not necessarily sure that was actually the right shot for him to play, as it looks like he actually found himself out of position, unless he wants to take that red into the right middle, which not too sure about. Let's see if he will, and it's a massive shot for him to try and take on, and he's missed it, and he's gave away a chance now to Mark Selby to be back in this frame, with Page actually managing to produce a break of 56 there. He used all of the points available to him with playing all of the reds with the black there, and now Mark Selby finds himself with an absolute gift there of a red hanging over the right middle. The only two issues that he's got ahead of him now is well, his positional side of things not being perfect either, but also two reds being quite close to the right side cushion, one of them being quite close to the bulk area and the other being in between the blue and the black spots there, sort of parallel to the pink spot itself. Now as the first colour of Selby's frame goes into the pocket there, with it being the green, he's now behind by 57 points, with still 83 on the table. So he's not going to be short in terms of points tally, but has to be absolutely sublime and perfect in terms of his positional play on every single one of those colours. And reds, of course. And so now starts off nicely there with a shot at the pink into the right corner. And he's now behind by 56 points. And Jackson Page will be absolutely kicking himself should he be the one to actually lose the frame here. And of course, a lot to happen for that until we can actually start to talk about is the real possibility. For now, it's still Page as a massive favourite for this frame, but the problem that he's got ahead of himself is he's got no control of what's happening on this table, and it's in Mark Selby's hands. Them trying to develop those reds into the bunch nicely first, until he can try and negotiate his way through there of the two problematic reds on the right side cushion, one of them being closer to the bulk area and the other one being in between the middle and the right corner pocket. For now, that Selby will go into the reds quite heavily and line himself up for a shot into the left middle and the left corner as well. So not looking bad for him either in terms of the three reds that he's just made look a lot healthier for him in terms of trying to get on one of those and land for the next colour. And actually one of those reds that has gone towards the right corner can be the one that he uses to develop the one on the right side cushion, with it being the most problematic one of the two. And don't think he'll be too happy with himself on the shot of the black there. This is an excellent match, a pleasure to be here with everyone. Peter O'Connor, appreciate the chat there. And it is certainly turning into an interesting match. I think the two frames that we started off with were quite slow, but also we're now getting somewhere with Selby being finally on top of his break building form. So he's about to face some of the obstacles of the current break that he was always going to find himself with. And he's now on 31 points, still 51 available, so he will obviously need to get very close to a total clearance for him to actually become the winner of the third frame. And right now we're about to witness two very important shots for him as he pots a red in, tries to develop the red on the right hand side. So in the end will land perfectly on the blue, but the red hasn't been developed any more than its previous position and circumstance. So once again Selby will use a lot of backspin and left hand side there to try and have the cue ball cannon into that red. In the end we'll miss it, and the only option he's got now is try and take the red into the green pocket, with him being 24 points behind, still 43 on the table. He's still in the equation for this frame now, Selby, but it's looking less and less likely that it's going to happen in the current visit to the table for him. And Jackson Page will have to come back to the table at least one more time in this frame. And Selby now has a very important shot into the green pocket to try and land himself on the yellow or green. So he needs to make the red first, and does. And lovely little cue action for him, but in the end it looks like we all know what's going to happen from here, as he lands pretty much tied up to the green. So just looking to see which is the most difficult area for Page to be trying to play into the red there, and Selby will get him snookered. So a break of 38 there for Mark Selby, and still could get some more points out of this, with the red being quite close to the cushion, so not necessarily going to give away a positional shot you would have thought after it, and leave a red for Selby, but can certainly get a couple of points here, with Selby lining up a decent snooker there, certainly covering up the right side of the table. And yeah, not too much of the left available either, with the brown being in the way. So let's see what Page can actually try and make here out of the position that he finds himself in. So 23 points clear, Jackson Page. So remember the position in the second frame, it was similar, but at that time Page was comfortably clear in terms of points. For now, Selby still has a lot of those available to him, and certainly enough to get himself back in the contention for the frame, as Page finally makes a decision of an approach onto that red, and just about misses the blue there. And has he judged the pace of the cue ball perfectly? I mean, he has, but has he given the same red away into the right corner, into the left corner, pardon? And if he has, it's all going to be down for nothing there for him. And if Selby can't get through to that corner, he'll try and land the red in between the pink there, and put some sort of snooker advantage to his name. So in the end decides to go for a plan B that I would have thought, and land the cue ball in behind the brown, but it's going to be a little bit short of pace there, and Page can actually see this red. So Selby, waste of initiative there, didn't get any points of the previous snooker, and now Jackson Page will have the chance to choose something with the colours if he wants to. Try and position the cue ball with the way that he will go into one of those colours, and put potentially one of those into a position that Selby can't play them from. For now, just the transition of the cue ball onto the black ball cushion, not necessarily worrying too much about the red, leaving that in the open area just above the pink spot. And Selby once again just taking his time on the shot, although it no longer finds himself in the position where he needs snookers. Still needs to make sure that he doesn't give away a position once again in the third frame, because that'll surely be the last time that will happen, and Page will be able to take it away from there and put himself ahead for the first time in the entire match category. But now Selby decides to send the red on towards the right side cushion there, and have the green in between the cue ball and the red, and manages to do that very nicely in the end. And Jackson Page probably will have to use the cushion first until he has to hit that red with the cue ball and just send it down the table. So wants to keep the red available to him, and that cue ball is not going to reach, and it's probably a disastrous shot there from Jackson Page, because not only has he given away 4 points now to Selby, as he left a shot on potentially into the left corner there. And Selby, of course, can ask for the cue ball to be put back, and he will. So Jackson Page once again will have to go for the same shot selection unless he decides to change his mind, and just guiding the referee to where he wants the cue ball to make sure that it's in the exact same position there. And as the delay didn't take too long, this time Jackson Page can try and just apply a bit more power on this shot, but of course doesn't want it to be too much, and forcing the red towards the right middle pocket isn't going to be in his plans. And he's played this shot pretty well though, and Selby once again has got a safety shot that he can line up into either of the corner pockets, sending the cue ball down the table there, and trying to apply some bit of pressure on his opponent once again now. So the third frame looked like it was going to be a very likely frame for us to see some rapid action there, and one of the players to take a comfortable win in the frame, but still not looking likely, as still a safety battle to resume, as Selby there pushes the cue ball once again away from the red and lands it on the right side cushion here. So Page will try and make sure he puts some distance there between the cue ball and the red. Try and potentially force it into the black ball cushion, with the cue ball landing in behind the yellow and the green there. So it's a nice shot there for him. Selby finds himself snookered, and I don't necessarily think there's an easy way for him to try and escape from this situation. Selby now will find the best trajectory and a line for him that works. Probably try and catch this red on his way back there. So catching the side cushion first and then black ball cushion before he will go into the red there. Once again, 19 points is the difference there between the two players. 35 still on the table. So very important for Selby not to give away a red into any of the corner pockets, because that'll probably be the end of a frame now for him. And he's given away a chance now for Jackson Page into the corner pocket. So in the end, it was one snooker that Jackson Page needed to get Selby into a little bit of trouble, and now finds himself with the chance of seeing a frame ball in a couple of shots time, with being 19 points clear now. The red will make that 20, and any of the future colours plus the yellow to finish off the frame here for Jackson Page. But now he finds himself 20 points clear. Lines himself a brown into the yellow pocket there. Try and line himself a shot into the yellow, into the green pocket there. And one of the easiest frame balls that we've actually seen today, with him being 24 points clear now. And straightforward yellow will put him 26 points clear, and with only 25 on the table. But there's no doubt about the fact that Mark Selby will try and come back into the table to play a couple of more shots at least. But I think Page will be relieved to see himself at least over the frame ball line. Try and get the green rolled into the right middle pocket there, and make sure that we won't see any more of Selby. But in the end, feels like the green has faded very clearly there, so unhappy with the position of and the situation of the cloth there. So 26 points clear now, Jackson Page, and 25 on the table. So certainly felt like that had the line, and I probably have to agree with him on the replay. It does seem like it has faded in towards the right corner, right middle pocket there, and caught the jaw until the green has actually caught that jaw and stayed out of the pocket. So Jackson Page still finds himself with a little bit of work to do, as Mark Selby tries to land a snooker for him. Needs to put the green away. Well, he probably does. And he's now trying to do that, to double it into the corner pocket. Doesn't look like he will actually end there, but it's going to be very close to the corner pocket. Let's see if Selby decides to take that one out of the game and take it to a 4-color game. But for now, he's still in the pursuit of a snooker, as he has been in every single one of those frames. So players not necessarily being the most clinical in terms of getting over the line and making sure that the player that is opposing them is not going to come back to the table for any more future shots. Now 23 points is the difference between Selby and Page, with the green disappearing into the corner pocket. So it's a good pot there from Selby, but it's probably the one that you'd expect him to make after sort of still needing a snooker, but could have landed one there. And in the end, I'm actually not too sure if he's actually managed to land one. So certainly will have to swerve around the blue there, Jackson Page, and needs to make sure he gets it. So little distance there in between the blue and the cue ball. And in the end, it's a really nice escape there from Page, and he actually managed to snooker Selby back here. So the cue ball from the black ball cushion into the brown will ensure that Selby still only needs one more snooker, and doesn't need more of those. And he just tries to roll up into the brown, send it further than the black there, but instead I think he'll give all the initiative now to Jackson Page here, and let the Welshman have a chance to roll the brown into the middle. Which is the shot that he's gone for, but once again, not necessarily being happy with the way the brown has behaved himself on that cloth. And with Mark Cullen being the player that has actually complained in the past, you know, Elias Less, I don't think he was too kind on letting his thoughts known to everyone when he was up against Trump there. And Jackson Page certainly has done that a couple of times already in this current clash against Mark Selby. Finds himself 23 points behind there, Selby. And will try and do something with his brown, unless he wants to roll that one in as well, which he does. So one more shot for him to, and one less color for him to try and deal with. So now has to do all the damage on the blue. Surely he's not going to try and go onto the getting a snooker on the pink, which it's not going to be easy for him to make. But to be fair, if there's one player on the snooker tour that you could actually expect that from, is probably Mark Selby himself. For now, finds the cue ball basically with no distance in between the blue and the target ball itself. So aiming to get the cue ball in behind the black in the end is going to be nowhere near it. So just getting those colors eliminated there, Page. So done that with the green, made Selby, well, basically left him with no choice but to try and get it into the left corner. And on the other time, has done the same with the brown there. And now Jackson Page would probably try and send the blue down the table and in towards the right corner pocket. Yeah, lots of complaints about table running, hard job table fit. Well, it certainly is, and it's all about 5 margins. I think it's going to be a little bit of a difficulty for them to try and adjust after, you know, being away from China, you know, playing Wuhan Open and China Grand Prix qualifiers. I think I've read a couple of articles that in mainland Europe and in the UK, it is quite different from the sort of tables that you've got in USA and China and Japan and Singapore and stuff. And back to the safety battle, as once again Mark Selby is aiming that blue in behind the pink. And this time has actually not even managed to lay a snooker of any sort of difficulty for Jackson Page there. So let's see if there's going to be any more complaints. As well, just as I say that, the referee has to get rid of something that was on the table. So that is not necessarily a good look for the people that have organised this, but I suppose they've got no other way and no other option than try and get on with it and maybe sort something out in the night after the matches between Elias Lesser, Mark Cullen, Aaron Hill and Jack Jones will end with us having all 4 semi-finalists known for tomorrow. And for now, once again, Selby feeling like he got the fate of the table. And yeah, I mean, those complaints are getting further and further now with Selby joining in there. And Jackson Page once again has got a clear-cut chance to try the roll the blue into the corner pocket, put an end to this lengthy frame number 3. And does he do that? Exactly, he does. So he will be framed to Jackson Page here. And he will now lead Mark Selby by 2 frames to 1. And, very lengthy, all of those frames. But in the end, Jackson Page manages to win at least 2 of them. And will go into the mid-session interval. Certainly not behind there, but can still try and do that with being ahead by 3 frames to 1 against Mark Selby, winning 3 on the bounce there for now. That is Mark Selby 1, Jackson Page 2, as we're looking forward now to the frame number 4, which is going to start pretty soon. Just want to check the odds for the current situation in the match. So Selby's still considered the favourite there by the odds and the bookies. So he's 166 for him to win and 2.2 there for Jackson Page to win. So surprised to see that, I'll be honest. But in the end, I suppose it's only a fair thing. And, well, I mean, is that fair, really, on Jackson Page with the way and the form that he's managed to produce throughout the tournament? Don't necessarily agree with that, but I suppose can't really argue with the bookmakers there. And once again, in terms of Jackson Page and his play, he's managed to frustrate Mark Selby, and that's for sure. I mean, he's managed to make him go the way that he doesn't want to go. He made him play the safety game that he doesn't necessarily enjoy, and he basically put him out of the game for the 2nd and 3rd frames. If he does that one more time in the 4th frame, I mean, you have a really healthy lead going into the 4th frame, and Selby will have everything to ahead of himself. For now, it's still early doors though, as Selby could still come away with a 2-all draw after the opening 4 frames. Did say before the match that the score prediction from me on this is going to be 5-3 in favour of Mark Selby. So I expect this to be close, but I still think that experience and just the pure quality of Mark Selby is going to get him over the line there. And on track to become the semi-finalist, but we're about to find out that that's going to be the case, with the referee making all the reds and colours ready for the players to make some action on, and just waiting for a couple of more seconds until we get the 4th frame underway. And this will be, of course, Mark Selby's turn to have a break-off shot, and Mark Selby will need this 4th frame. He doesn't want to be going into the mid-session interval trailing by 3 frames to 1. Of course, that will put Jackson Page as a slight and maybe a major favourite into their quarter-final contention as well, as we battle for the spot in the semi-finals, after we already know one of those being announced in a brilliant clash against Luca Broussel. Watchalong managed to overcome a tricky decider for him and become the Chinese player that is going to be the semi-finalist here. Of course, Wu Yize was another player from China that has actually managed to reach the final at the same tournament here last year. But for now, Jackson Page starts off with a horror shot there on the red, catches it almost full ball, and Selby can try and play this red into the left corner. So let's see what he's going to make out of this red though. And can he make a significant break now, with his highest break still being the value of 38? It's nowhere near good enough if you're Mark Selby. Someone was complaining when he made the highest break of 76 against Wu Yize in the entire match. Well, in the opening 3 and a bit frames now, he's only managed to produce a break of 38. Well, he's got a really good chance now to try and make it a better break than that, and the break of a higher value than that. He's got so many reds available to him without even going into the pack, with already taking one out. Still has 4 more available to him. So 40 points certainly being on the cards there for him. And that, of course, comes without saying that should he go into the red successfully, he'll land himself on a couple more of those and get himself a really nice chance of making it a 2-2 scoreline ahead of the 5th frame there. Making it still anyone's game for the taking. As for now, Jackson Page has to stay in his chair and wait patiently for the chance that probably will come in this frame, with the position still being far from ideal in terms of these being the last visits to the table for Mark Selby in the first mini session. But he is capable of producing those little moments of magic there, Selby. Just a little bit of an issue that we haven't seen that from him for quite some time now. In terms of me particularly, I haven't really seen the Selby that I know and was ultimately scared of in the season like 2014, like 2017. And you can even say it's the same about 2021 there. With him becoming world champion in some of those seasons. But now he finds himself on 24 points and has got a red into the left corner to try and pot. Once again, aiming to land himself for the black there. And after this red, you'll have one more that you can try and pot into the left corner until more damage will have to be done and more changes will have to be done to the position, not necessarily damage. But Selby now has got and will have a temptation to go into the bunch really heavily now from the angle that he's got on this black, but with him just using the backspin on the shot and not necessarily disguising that one too much, you can probably see that he's not going to do that, and he's going to try and line himself up for a red into the right middle. Land himself on either pink or blue and go into the reds quite heavily from that. So, which is why I think he'll go for the blue option. Try and land on top of that blue and get himself, as I say, in a really good spot for cannoning the reds. But change of mind, or it was always going to be the plan for Selby, as he goes for the green here. So sending the cue ball into the bunch from the right side cushion. Not going to be easy. But certainly has to manage this well though, as he's still not even at his highest break of the match here, and got himself a little bit of luck. Not necessarily gone into the reds in the perfect way, but has managed to land on at least one of those into the left corner. So now, with 3 more reds for him on the table and very much in action, could it be Mark Selby winning the first frame that we've seen of this match from a single visit to the table? Certainly looking forward to see how that one will go. Now about to put himself 37 points clear with still 99 on the table. And the black will be available for him to try and play into the right corner, but I'm just thinking, if he landed straight on this black, which I think he has, does he have to go into the cushion there to try and land on the red into the left corner and land on the top side of it? No, to be fair, he has got a little bit of an angle. Try and get himself off the black ball cushion and into the red, into the right corner. So nicely done once again. 44 points scored. Will get himself for the first time over the value of break of 50 points break there for the first time in the match. As for now, has to put this red into the right corner and get himself on a nice little angle with the black to try and go for either last remaining red or try and go heavily into the bunch. Something that is an opportunity for him, of course, as well. But for now, hesitates to go with a shot on the rest and just decides to take another approach and change the strategy for himself. Go for the red into the same corner, but different rest technique this time. Hold that one in the air to make sure he doesn't catch the pink, and still generates a lot of angle there on the black here. So 45 points clear will make that 52 with his black, and the next red will get him over the mark of 60 points there. And very important for him to keep going here and not stop basically until he actually manages to win this frame. He's got into the reds really difficulty and really hardly there. In the end, he's on 52 points and is on the red into the left corner. So certainly a lot of work for him still to try and do. And it's a difficult shot for him to try and manage now into the left corner. And he makes this one, and it's a really important shot if he is on the black there, and he's just about is. But it's not a perfect angle that he finds himself on the black here, so has to manage the chance here for him. And let's see what he can make out of this situation for himself. As I say, if you just try to roll the black into the right corner, and the cue ball will inevitably go into the reds here, and try and land himself nicely onto one of those into the right corner as well. And instead, we'll be hoping that he's on one into the right middle, but it doesn't look like he is. And we'll face probably a safety shot now to play, unless, as I say, that red is going to be potable into the left middle. Really, that's the only red that he's actually gone for and landed himself on. So 83 points still on the table, so Jackson Page could still pull off a comeback here in the frame, but a break of 60 will make it the highest break of Mark Selby's campaign here in this match, and make it the highest break of the entire match against among either of the players, with the best that Jackson Page has managed to produce has been a break of 56 points. And once again there, Selby checking the option that he's got ahead of him, and looks like he'll just send the cue ball up the table and in towards the ball colours. For now, yet to make a decision on that, and checking all of the angles that he's got to himself. So in terms of him being safe from pursuit there from Jackson Page, he's got two reds available onto the left cushion, so he can try and go for this red into the yellow pocket, but in the end he misses it, and not necessarily leaves the same red away, but will give away initiative here in terms of playing the first shot of Jackson Page, with him not necessarily being too far out there from the cushion, but still has got an ability to try and generate some form of spin there. And we'll go for this red into the left middle, and in the end he will take this chance now. And as I say, there's more than enough points for Jackson Page to try and win this frame now, and he's about to start doing that. And a brilliant setup there once again on the red into the left middle. Now finds himself on the red into the left corner. He's 7 points into this break now. 53 points is the difference between the two of them. As I say, a couple of colors and a couple of reds, I should say, being on the left-hand side of the cushion there. So don't think there's going to be any more issues for him after that, though. As for now, has to make his way through those reds that are available and try and focus on the ones that, you know, he's sort of get to at the later stages of the frame. Big visit. It certainly is a big visit, because if Jackson Page manages to take this frame away now, it's going to be such a massive win for him in terms of the frame. And he's on 27 points after making another black in. So the red into the left corner will put him within reach there of Mark Selby. And still so many of those reds are actually going to be available to him. As one more disappears there into the corner, but he underruns there slightly for the pink, and potentially will have to go for the blue. Land himself on the top red there, available into the yellow pocket. Don't think there's going to be any more options to him after that. Selby should have played that red to the left top left corner. Certainly, I think it was a bit of arrogance there from Selby. As you know, there's 51 points still on the table now for Page. And he gets the break of 29 already, so still has got some difficulties ahead of him, but as I say, should have been anywhere near the equation for this frame, and finds himself in actually quite a favourable situation, probably as the favourite for the frame now, with him being at the table, although he's still 31 points behind. And he's no longer going to be the favourite for the frame though now, because he missed the red and he's left the same one for Mark Selby into the left corner. So it's all could be for nothing now, and chase off Jackson Page being short there. Not necessarily done everything that he could have. You know, as I say, I don't think he's landed perfectly for that red. Could have gone onto the top part of the table. Decided not to do that and try and force the position out of the circumstances that probably weren't favouring it. And Selby just about drops that red in, so certainly was close. And needs one more after this colour to be over the line and hopefully get the fourth frame on his scoreboard without any more snooker attempts and pursuit there from Jackson Page. For now, about to make the gap between the two players of 36 points. 37 points, I should say. And the red will make that 38 with only 35 on the table. So, although Selby and Page both made, some significant errors and mistakes in this match, both of them still looking like they're going to be heading on towards their second mini session on level terms there, as Selby will certainly get that red into the yellow corner. And now with this blue being rolled in, surely will get himself in a really nice position to win the fourth frame. Don't know if we'll see any more of Jackson Page though in action. Selby gets quite fortunate there with a touch on the ping to get himself in with a chance to get the red in to the corner pocket, it being the last one of the reds on the table. And we'll certainly do that, so there's not going to be any snooker pursuit there from Jackson Page. And it's going to be frame to Mark Selby. So we are going to be heading into the second mini session after the 15 minutes break with Mark Selby 2 and Jackson Page 2 here. With Selby missing the pink there. I think it will be the end of the first mini session. And it certainly will be, as players are ready to leave and have the deserved break of 15 minutes. But for now it is Mark Selby 2, Jackson Page 2. Still a lot of action yet to come though, as we return to table number 1 and find out the name of the second semi-finalist. Let's see what's going to happen there, but for now it is intermission of 15 minutes time, and we'll see you once that actually finishes there. So see you in 15 minutes. Right, everyone. We are back. The intermission is over, so the 15 minutes have flown by, and Jackson Page is about to get the 5th frame underway. So finally going to get some more action after that break has felt for like some sort of a distance in between the previous frames. But now finally we are back in action, and break-off shot there from Page is decent. I wouldn't say it has put Mark Selby into any sort of trouble, but he certainly can try and have a goal and a safety shot that you'll find. With a couple of those available, Reds, I think he can just try and push one of them into the main pack, but that's not the way to do that, as he missed the red in its entirety. So 4 points given away there to Jackson Page straight away. Not necessarily the best shot that Mark Selby would have dreamt about when he came back onto the scene. And I think the referee will just put the cue ball back where he was and make sure that it is in its exact spot there. So just checking with the screen where the cue ball placement should be. So a little bit of a delay straight away, but I don't think we're going to see Mark Selby making the same mistake for the second time of asking. And the cue ball will be placed in behind the brown and the green here. So let's see. Attempt number 2 now from Selby to get this safety underway. And try and send the cue ball back towards the table. I mean, he caught that one really thin. Once again, only just about makes the shot there. And this time though, and that will do the damage to Jackson Page in terms of not giving any sort of easy chances to him, but not necessarily from the safety point of view, as Jackson Page there makes an early mistake. And wow, I mean, it was a mistake from Selby to give away 4 points, but this time Jackson Page gives away a red there into the left corner. So that is a massive mistake from Jackson here, and can Selby convert this mistake into a chance for himself? Managed to produce the break of 60 on the last frame, and certainly is not happy with the way the cue ball has behaved once again there, Selby. Not for the first time. You see players complaining about that one, and yeah, you can see straight away he knew that take away the cue ball, and yeah, he knew that either he didn't play the shot well or the cue ball faded and not done him any favour either. Anyway, we're now back to Jackson Page and him having to find his way out. Even though Selby managed to miss the pot, he still put the cue ball very safe there on top of the brown spot and onto the ball cushion. So Jackson Page has to navigate his way through and well, at least find the cue ball safe, and as a bonus he can try and get the red in, win the frame and the match here. I think that will do him nicely. So he can try and go for the red into the left corner. I think you can see enough of that, but with the cue ball being very close onto the main pack of reds, I don't think that's a risk that he's sort of going to be willing to take. As just plays into the red there to try and catch a full ball and leave the cue ball onto the black ball cushion area. So chance for Selby to try and take on the left middle right. The left middle red there. The left middle right is a bit too much for him to try and take on. But a red into the left middle is possible. I don't think he's going to go for one into the right, because it's going to take the cue ball away there and leave it on the bottom part of the cushion. So he was actually trying to do something with it. I think he's probably just going to send the cue ball up the table there. In the end, he did decide to go for a red into the middle, but caught the back end jaw there, and still that red has bounced back there, and it's going to be available for Jackson Page to try and take on, as he has a look at another red's availability into the left middle. So Selby felt like this was the shot for him to try and take. In the end, it wasn't meant to be there, and Page will try and have a chance of his own as he rolls the red into the middle, and it's Jackson Page with the first chance now of this 5th frame. Gets himself 5 points on the board for being the foul that Selby gave him earlier. And this chance can be costly for Selby in terms of the points tally. You know, for now, if Jackson manages to get the cue ball down the table, you have a couple of reds to try and work with. And it's going to go very close to the right middle. And does he see enough of that red there? And even if he does, can he get through to the next column? So he's having a look there. It's very, very tight there between the cue ball, either passing in between the pink and the other red, or it's going to clash with one of those. So not too sure that Page will actually take this red on. But he's taking something on as he's quick to get down for the shot. And he'll take the other red, you would have thought, into the corner pocket, and he'll miss it. So I'm not necessarily sure what he was playing at anyway, with him landing nowhere near any other colours. So probably starting the fifth frame exactly where we left off in the first one. Way too many errors, and players not necessarily performing at their best. But as they get up to speed, as they have done in the frames 3 and 4, hopefully we'll see a lot more than that in the upcoming stages. Once again, referee goes hunting for insects and removing one of those from the snooker table. But Jackson Page will have to do something about the position that he finds himself in. Mark Selby just rolled into the pack of reds and left Page with not so much to try and do there. Other than just try and force the red into the left-hand side, which is something that he's done. But as I managed to leave a touching ball there for Selby, so he's just looking to see which is the perfect position to try and land the cue ball in. And then try and take it away there. So for now, of course, the match still has underperformed to an extent with the fluidity and the flow of the game. But in terms of action and nothing to separate the two players, it certainly has delivered with the opening 4 frames, giving us a scoreline of 2 frames each. As Selby in the end could have shown too much of the red into the left corner, but lands the cue ball nicely onto the ball cushion. So I think Page will have to roll the cue ball into one of those reds, potentially try and get it into the corner pocket, but doesn't want to leave a red into the right corner though. But in the end, it's exactly what's happened to him. Caught a double kiss of the same red that's bounced off the cushion. And it is going to be, once again, a chance for Mark Selby. The one that he didn't manage to take with a long shot into the left corner. This time, he's got a much shorter shot into the right corner though. So just play through the cue ball. Try and land yourself on the black is going to be very important. The accuracy on the shot will dictate the run of play. In the end, the red is comfortably in, but the cue ball is not so much comfortably on the black here. And I'm not even sure he's going to take on this black. I think if you're going to take any of the colours on, surely it'll be the pink here from... Can't really see Selby on any of the reds positioning from this black, but he's taking it on, so he clearly can. In the end, he cannoned himself into a red, and what a shot he's played there. I mean, out of nothing, gets himself a real chance. And he's actually managed to take one of the reds out of the cushion and get it into an available play, into the right middle. And with the cue ball being forced through this red, just try and land himself on the blue, into the left middle. So certainly looking very, very nicely now for Selby in terms of the early stages of the frame number 5. It looked like it was going to be Jackson Page with the opening chance, but with him running himself out of position, gave away that opportunity to Selby now. And it's Mark that is going to ensure that he takes the most out of it, with at least 2 more reds available to him, one more being very close to the left side cushion there. But let's see the way he navigates his way through. And the big pack of reds there in the end consists of 9 reds. So it's less than usual, and that could be a benefit for him because he doesn't have to go so hard into those for them to split up. And hopefully for Mark to try and land on either one into either middle or left corner pocket there, with him playing onto the cushion from the white and not necessarily getting the lock there. Once again, the cue ball bounces quite hard there off the bunch, and always difficult to do that from the bottom part of the table. But this time, he'll see if he can get that red into the middle, but if not, he'll probably have to just send the cue ball up towards the top part of the table and not waste any more of his time. But he does seem to be taking this red on, though. If it's going to be for a shot of a safety or for the shot into the middle, it was for the shot into the middle. And in the end, probably was the wrong shot for Selby to try and approach, as he has missed it. And it is now Jackson Page back to the table right now. And has got a couple of reds out of the position that Selby has managed to free up for himself. Just didn't quite land on any of the reds themselves after playing a really good black there into the pack. And Jackson Page will take the invitation shot into the yellow pocket and get himself back onto the break here. So behind by only 11 points right now, still with the 107 on the table. Certainly very much in the contention for the frame, and probably is for the first time in a while now a contention from winning these frame. Not for the first time I'm asking, but from the second time. It's still going to be good enough for him, as the amount of reds that he's got available to him. And just a little bit of a shame for Selby, because he did that job himself. You know, he's developed so many of those reds, but the problem that he has to face is all of those reds are now going to be developed for his opponents to try and take advantage of. As he evens the points tally there, Jackson Page. So it's now 22 points each, with the Welshman still being at the table. And has got a red into the right corner to try and play, until he lands himself what I would assume is going to be a shot into the middle of the pink. And yeah, certainly looking forward to see if he can try and make a break of some sort of significance. I don't think it's going to be a century break, with us not necessarily getting anywhere near those. But at least the break that will make him win the frame from here, I think is going to be a good enough of a start. And there you go. You can just see he's looking at the reds that are forming some sort of plant there. So that's a clear look of a concern in his face, because he doesn't want to go into the pack too many times. So he just wants to make sure he navigates his way through the pack. And partially he's compromised right now with him being very straight on this black. And if anything, he's not straight into the wrong angle. So yeah, makes a mess of the position that was looking like it was going to be promising. Scoring only 20 points on the current break. And now either has got a shot into the left middle or left corner. I think the corner shot is going to be a bit more lenient to him. And he goes for a middle shot and he makes it. So fair play to him for that. You know, he went on to go for the most difficult of the two shots that he had ahead of him. Was always going to catch the back jaw there, but in the end caught not too much of it for the red to drop. And this time it still has got a chance to send the red into the left middle and continue to be on the break of his own. I think he'll have the ball colours to follow up shortly after this. And yellow or green now are both available. I think he'll go for the green, with his sending the cue ball onto the left hand side of the table, with a lot of backspin and screw back here. So apply a lot of power and you're going to be on one of those reds inevitably into the left corner. No frame winning break so far. Looking at your graphics, enjoying the channel while I'm working. No worries, Andrew, appreciate you. And yeah, to be honest with you, if I give you a little summary, certainly none of those. You know, the highest break of Selby of 60 was in the fourth frame. And he actually stopped himself from getting on the last of the reds that would have been very close to a frame ball area, but still went on to win the frame. And I will say this though, when you get a break of sort of 37-40, because your opponent can't necessarily respond with a break of 70-60, you're more likely to win the frame. So I think we haven't seen any real steals or shocks here so far. So, you know, it's been so far so good and predictable. for whoever gets the first chance and makes something out of it. Always gets the better of your opponent. So Jackson Page there just asking to have the cue ball cleaned. And there's 59 points on the table, so 28 is the gap there. And once again can try and screw back there and go into the cue ball with some sort of power. Find himself lined up on the red into the left corner. So once again, a very straightforward end to the position in terms of the points that he'll need. You know, you take away those two reds, and instead of 59 points on the table, it's going to be 43. And the gap of Jackson Page's advantage will be way further than that. So it was a waste in the end for Mark Selby, and it was the wrong shot that he's managed to take on. So in the end, it looks like you will be Jackson Page with the first real significant break now that is going to get him over the line, and he will. It's now 44 points is the gap with only 43 on the table. So, you know, it's been a more positive start to the fifth frame than it has been to some of the opening frames in the session. He's now 50 points clear with 43 on the table, so we'll get one more red in, and surely Mark Selby won't come back to the table there. As for now, he asks for a rest there to be handed to him. And we'll go for a shot along the cushion there, which is something that I find surprising, really, because I think the easiest shot would have been for him to try and go on the right-hand side of the table, and in the end Mark Selby will indeed come back to the table. So still no real, you know, sort of breaks that will make you say, oh my god, what a break that was. You know, break of 62, and a reaction there from Page, certainly not being too happy with himself, realizing that I have a couple more shots to play in this frame, with Selby certainly coming back to the table to test his luck here, and something that he's done in the, well, something that both of the players have done in the previous 4 frames. Still, no one got close, but that doesn't mean that a player like Mark Selby will stop trying there, as he does the right thing by taking one of the reds with the black there. So 42 points behind with 35 on the table, so 2 snookers for him to be in with a chance to win the frame. And with the first one, surely he's going to be sending the cue ball in behind the black there and trying to send the red up the table. In the end, it's a decent approach, but I don't think that's going to trouble Jackson Page for too much and give him too much of a hard time. In the end, Selby has done his part, and it's now all about looking at the sort of what Jackson Page can do from here. I think he can go for just a straightforward shot into the cushion with a lot of right-hand side on the cue ball, and a little bit of swerve there actually, so certainly couldn't do that straight. And in the end, we'll catch the red quite comfortably there. Leave it away for Mark Selby, but that's not going to do any damage to Jackson Page at this stage of the frame, with Selby still needing a snooker. And at least to start off until we get the second one, unless he's going to be given away with a free ball, something that we haven't seen happen yet in the opening 4 frames. But as I say, they're trying for a reason, and they're going to try to do their best for a reason there. But this time Selby, once again, not doing his best, and the red will be visible. And I'm not too sure that it's actually going to be too easy for him to try and do some damage to Mark Selby, although you'll play around this shot now and send the red on towards the right part of the table. So it's not bad there for himself, but and it's nothing. It's not, as I say, the position is set up for him quite nicely to lay off a snooker, but Mark Selby is not going to give this one up, and it's a nice shot there once again from Selby to put some pressure on Jackson Page, so he has to find himself getting out of snooker once again, and sending that one into the red, then misses it, so not necessarily a great start for him, And now this time has to take a red into the right corner, give us a break there. And I mean, yeah, talk about give us a break. Certainly, it's all about giving us a break at the moment, because we've seen only a break of 62 being the highest alongside the two players. And Mark Selby this time only needs one more snooker for him to be back in the contention for the frame. As he lands a decent shot there on Jackson Page yet again. So we're talking something now, and this time it's only one snooker for Selby to be right back in it. And Page there just about catches the red with the right hand side of it, and it looks like he's going to snooker Selby back there. So a bit unlucky there, Selby, in the end. So has to find himself facing a snooker as well. And just try and send the cue ball into the left hand side of the table. Maybe try and catch the red on his way back there. And catch the red full ball there. Caught that really nicely in the end. Would have liked for that one to finish in behind any of the colours. That's not going to happen. And Page can actually try and go for the red into the green pocket. And try and do something about it in the end. What a shot this is, and a brilliant shot for Jackson Page to finally put the frame to bed and make it a scoreline of 3 frames to 2. Certainly there's going to be no more chances for Mark Selby, even though it was a single snooker that he was looking for. In the end, it's looking like it is going to be a perfect story and a perfect start now to the second mini session from Jackson Page, with him doing something that he's managed to do, as I keep repeating myself, to Sean Murphy and Neil Robertson at the early stages. And now he's only 2 frames away from trying to knock out the world number 9 out of the tournament, making that 3 out of 3 big seeds beaten. And for now he is leading Mark Selby by 3 frames to 2. So a nice shot there for it. Jackson Page to finish off the 5th frame and surely make him a slight favourite onto the upcoming couple of frames there. So 191, 191 for each there. So nothing to separate the two in terms of the odds on the various websites there. So let's see if that's going to be the case. I still think that Selby has got a lot more to offer than he has, but needs to make sure that, you know, sort of he comes away with some sort of answer very quickly. Otherwise, it's going to be Jackson Page match to lose, as the referee will get the Reds re-racked pretty quickly. And we're going to be back for some more action. And still no frame winning breaks. You know, Page's break of 62 was decent in the previous frame, but it still hasn't done all the damage, missing the red along the cushion into the left corner. Has proven to be costly for him. But only 10 or so shots after, he did manage to get himself a frame on the board. So now leads by 3 frames to 2. And not necessarily any momentum building stuff here, with Selby winning the opening frame. You know, Page managed to equalise and get a second frame in a row there for him. And then Selby managed to get one back. And once again, Jackson Page responded with having one more frame of his own there. Yes, for now, we are getting ready for the evening session to start. I think the match that was going to start at 7 o'clock on this table is probably going to be delayed here, because I can't really see at least 2 more frames that Jackson Page will need to get himself into a semi-final, being finished in less than half an hour. But for now, he is back now from a bathroom break. And we are ready to get the 6th frame underway. Once the referee will put the cue ball to the players for the break off. I think I'd tell Selby if it's 50-50 with the bookies now, if I was having a bet. Not though, and I hope Page takes the win. This is what I'm saying. I think it's obviously 191 for each, because Page is 1 frame ahead and he's only 2 frames away from the semi-final. But Selby is the higher ranking player. So it's the world number 9 against the world number 33. So who's the favourite before the match? Obviously Selby. But who's the favourite now, with Page only needing 2 frames to become the semi-finalist, with Selby needing all 3? I'll probably take Page at this stage, I'll be honest. Still haven't seen absolutely nothing that makes me feel like Selby's, you know, the man to beat. I thought I will. I really thought I will, but still haven't. And it's been alright of a performance. It probably was better to an extent from Selby than what he produced yesterday, but it's still nowhere near the form that it'll require for him to, progress further and even beat Jackson Page here. For now, Page has got a shot into the left corner that he misses, so an early chance could have gone his way, in the end landing for one of the bowl colours, but instead he's going to give a shot away to Mark Selby into the left corner. So he decides to go for the one into the right, so a lot of cue action required if he wants to do that. Certainly aiming the cue ball for the blue, but what a shot this is. I mean, what a time to deliver this will be now for Selby, and maybe it wasn't the wrong decision to go for Selby at this stage, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. I still think this is Page's match to lose, and until then, Selby has to get as many points on the board as possible to get himself in the equation here. Big frame, this one. It's absolutely massive, and as always, it's going to be even more massive for Selby, as I think he's put himself in a very difficult position straight after playing a brilliant red, lands himself on the wrong side of the blue, and he's going to find himself snookered here. So, I mean, whatever he's saying, don't think it's going to be pleasant words, because I think he's giving a hint to everybody that this table is not going to be invited to and be sent a Christmas card by him. A lot of players saying that, and when a lot of players like Mark Selby, like Mark Allen, like Jackson Page himself, like Elias Lesser are saying that, well, you probably have to think about maybe all of them are right and you're actually wrong. But it certainly is going to be the end of a break for Mark Selby, and just a question of which red is he actually going to land on. He actually finds himself in a pretty difficult snooker, really, after playing a shot of the blue there, travelling off the ball colours. The cue ball has landed in behind the same blue there. And yeah, because no other spots were available there of colours. I mean, the only place where the blue had to go was underneath its own spot, which was covered up by the white there. So Selby was always going to find himself snookered, hence why his reaction was so obvious straight away, realising the mistake it has just made. And 6 points now is the difference between Selby and Page. But that could be cut down very, very shortly, with Selby still not even thinking about the approach that he thinks is going to lead him to victory here, and at least get him safe and to get the cue ball safe. Yeah, so something that we've seen too much of from safety side of things, and from Selby himself, he hasn't been good enough in the positional side of things. His pot success has been alright, but he's been nowhere near the form that you would expect him to have in the quarter-final stage. As if the referee wasn't there, I would know if he actually managed to hit the red. But in the end, well, the applause from the crowd, it certainly looks like he did. So, waiting for a replay on that. As I say, the referee was standing right in front of camera. Rightly so, probably, but I would have expected the cameraman to switch to another angle. And yeah, in the end, it's a perfect shot there from Selby. He will still leave a red into the green pocket for Jackson Page to try and take on. So it probably won't be a perfect shot if he makes this one, but he doesn't. And is he going to give the same red away to Selby? Yes and no. I'm not sure if it's that actually cuttable into the yellow pocket. It's close. He's got another red into the middle to try and take on. I don't think he'll be doing that after losing the frame because of that in the previous occasion. And certainly that red into the yellow pocket is looking the better option for him. But for now, you'll consider the shot into the right middle to try and take on. And until then, it's still a decision no made for Mark Selby. And I can't believe he's actually taking this red into the middle. I mean, surely not after what happened in the previous frame. He can't miss that twice in a row. And he can't. I mean, he makes this one, so fair play. I'm always going to say, you're stupid for taking that on if he misses, but I'm always going to say, well done. Well done, you're the best for when he makes that, but that's the human nature for you. And I don't think he's the best though. I still think he needs to do better in terms of getting on the colours and the reds. But that's a start. And that's a start that he has to convert into something bigger for himself. So Jackson Page won't necessarily be too impressed with himself. You know, he had a shot into the green pocket that he took on. He didn't leave the same red, but hasn't done enough with the cue ball. Of course, he was trying to land himself on the black, had that red dropped into the green pocket, but still should have done better, should have known better. With really me not thinking any second that he was going to make that red. It was a really difficult shot for him to try and take on. And still could be the one that cost him very, very dearly. For now, Selby just about lands on this red. So once again, not being perfect at all with his positional side of things. Has got a red into the right middle to try and take on, but with a much harder angle for himself. And actually, I'm not too sure if he's actually landed on this red into the right corner with him taking such a long approach. And he will take this on. He'll cannon the cue ball into the black nicely for himself. So survives the early scare. And he's still in prime position for this break. So a break of 15 points and counting. The position is still very much closed off here with 3 more reds available to Selby. Nothing on top of that for now. So 2 reds on the lower part of the table. Not too sure if those two are going to free up 1 more into the right corner. And of course 1 more red on the top part of the table. So no is the answer. I think that red is blocked off by the other red. So still 2 more reds for Mark Selby to try and use here until he runs himself out of position and out of room for the open reds and has to make more either of the position on the blue or black there. So it depends on his decision and what his sort of approach is going to be. For now, he goes for the red on top part of the table. So that's going to be 35 points for him now. 29 to 36. And lands himself for the brown into the green pocket. So once again, nicely done here. And the brown will send the cue ball back towards the lower part of the table. So just using that red really cheaply for himself. Getting himself 40 points now on the break. And, sorry, the break being 34 and getting himself 40 points with the current break of 34. And it's a significant advantage now over Jackson Page here, but still the one that needs working on if he is to make it and turn it into the one that will actually win in the frame from a single visit to the table. Don't think you can sort of count the opening fiasco there, as he managed to snooker himself on the blue after not having enough power on the cue ball there. But once again, doesn't seem to be perfect on this black, as finally TNT broadcast updated the scoreline with it matching the one that we have on that graphic. So a little bit of a screw back now of this black, and he's going to have a shot into the right middle there, Selby, but it's a plant. It's a plant that's got some distance in between the reds. And it's not going to be easy for Selby to try and manage this. Of course, if he does make it, he gets himself another red and 1 more in the available area, but has to make this one perfectly, and he does. So healthy, that is. Healthy, because next black will put him to 56 points. And 1 more red plus black combination will put him onto the highest break of the entire match here. So for now, has got a little bit of an angle there on these black into the right corner. Makes that one stick. So we're certainly on 56 points now. So this is better from Selby and Page. You know, I thought the start to frame number 5 was once again a little bit scrappy, but you know, from there we were able to take it to the next level. And finally, Selby is, even though he is taking a lot of time in between the shots, he's finally managing to get the most out of his positional play, and with him landing comfortably on those colours, Selby will not give an inch. Well, I mean, it looks like a good commentary that Selby will not give an inch, but as I say, I still think he is playing catch-up here, and he probably has no better option than try and produce a break here. Now has got himself lined up on the yellow, so I think that's clearly with in mind of sending the cue ball into the reds there quite heavily, hoping to land on at least one of them. In the end, it's a perfect shot once again for Selby. So finally, are we going to see a very good break now? And is that going to be from Mark Selby's point of view? Because with all those reds that he just managed to spread up, he just made his work a lot easier than it was a couple of shots ago or so. Now 2 more shots for him to take the frame away. And a couple more to make it the highest break of the match here. With him already making it better than anything that he's managed in the previous 5 frames. Taking it to a value of 61. Only 1 point away from equaling Jackson Page 62 there. And once again, brilliant there on the cue action. Lands himself really, really nicely on this blue. Don't think he'll take the pink out of there. So I think the pink and blue will swap positions now. And yeah, have a little multi-21 there. If you know, you know. GG's. Well, it is GG's in the frame. I'm still looking forward to finally seeing a century break of Mark Selby. Or Jackson Page. I don't necessarily mind, but looks like it is going to be Selby that will have the best chance of doing that with, you know, black disappearing into the right corner. You'll have 3 more open reds there for him to try and make that the first century of the match. It certainly has been the first real frame winning break here, of it being 75 points. And anything better than we've seen so far here today in this current match. Remember that we only seen a single century in the massive clash in between Watchalong and Luca Brusel there. In the end, Selby will go for the red along the cushion here, so not going to be too difficult with him having a nice little angle for the black there, so doesn't necessarily have to do anything with the cue ball, but still wants to use the cushion there for his name, and won't do him any damage either there. So once again, a black into the right corner, and he's going to be only 2 shots away from making, in fact a little bit more than that, so 3 shots away from making a century break. So the red and black will make that 99 points, and the transition onto, well, it doesn't necessarily have to be the black, it can be any other color that he wants to go and choose here. And it looks like he will be blue here. So yellow and green will be needed after this blue, because it's not a black there, and you'll lose 2 points that you could have potentially scored on the break. But it's a lot better, finally, we're seeing something that you would expect from a multiple world champion to perform in the quarterfinal. As I say, this break was much anticipated. It was from a position out of nothing, so give some credit to Mark Selby when he deserves it. And he's managed to make this one stick for himself. As now he's on 100. Not sure why it says on 110 points, but what on earth happened there? Anyway, we'll just forget that, and we'll say that it is a break of 98 points now, and he makes the green in, so a little bit of a delay, but anyway, it is a break of 105 and counting now for Mark Selby. The first century that we've seen of the match here, and looks like that will be the end, as we're not going to get any further than that. So he's got a really difficult shot to try and take on in the blue into the right corner, and then get himself on the pink. Of course, the blue was out of position because they had to swap positions there with the pink. In the end, he'll get the blue in. I don't think he'll be lined himself up too nicely for the pink into the green pocket. So I think that'll be it there. And Selby's not even going to bother with that shot. And a break of 111 points in the end. He's going to make that count for Mark Selby and make it 3 frames each. Mark Selby 3, Jackson Page 3 here as well at English Open quarter-final. And we're about to start off the other matches, of course, as well, with those starting at 7 o'clock local time in Britain and in England, to be precise. And once again, Mark Selby, after finding himself behind, he's managed to recover well. and he is now within a couple of frames himself from taking this match and moving himself into a quarter-final spot, which is going to be very nice for him. Very nice achievement for him as well. For now, still 2 more frames for us that we're guaranteed to see. Could still be made and transformed into 3 frames should we witness another decider after seeing a brilliant clash between Watchalong and Luca Brissell earlier. Let's hope that it's not going to be as breathtaking and as long of a decider as that one was. But still looking forward to see the most of action between those 2 players. The match has started almost 3 hours ago. Which match will be delayed tonight? No idea. I'll let you know as soon as I know. I think it will be. Well, logically, from the point of view, I think the Slessor against Allen match would have been the table number 1 because he's got the higher seed on it. And Jack Jones and Aaron Hill, therefore, probably shouldn't be delayed. And Mark Allen against Elias Slessor will have to wait for Jackson Page against Mark Selby clash to finally find a winner. And I think that's logical, but as I say, I'm only going off guessing work and don't necessarily have the actual knowledge for it because they never actually publish the matches that are going to be delayed or not going to be delayed and stuff. But we'll see. We'll see what we've got here. For now, we can see the referee finishing the job with the red, so the black will go on his spot, the pink will follow his example. And yeah, very nice to see Century Break finally in this quarterfinal. And let's see if Jackson Page has got anything to respond with. You know, maybe Mark Selby can try and do better there and take it 1 step forward, potentially put himself only 1 frame away there of becoming the 2nd semi-finalist here at English Open. Of course, it's always nice, I assume, and me living in England myself. So once again, Jackson Page losing his chalk. We all know what happened the last 2 times. Either of the players lost the chalk. They won the frame there, so it could be a tactical switch of the play there from Jackson Page. You never know, and as I say, if you go on and bet on this frame and he wins it, you know, you have to give a hat off to the superstition. Jack Jones, so I say that's right, they wouldn't have Jam Jones on the main table. Jones is not the best to watch, very slow player. Well, it's a little bit disrespectful, but I probably will have to agree with you on that one because the match of Jack Jones against Ricky Walden, I wasn't watching it, but I was watching the highlights, and when you want to go to sleep from highlights, I mean, that says it all. The fact that as Selby goes for a shot into the left corner, misses it, gets away with it. The fact that there was the time where he was playing Jamie Jones there, Jack Jones was playing Jamie Jones in this very much tournament, in round 4 I think it was, maybe in round 3 actually. He took so much time, well, both of them took so much time on that match that we actually, so it was a match that started at 4 o'clock local time, and he managed to finish after the match that had started at 7 o'clock. And what a shot Jackson Page has managed to play. So, brilliant shot there from him. And I mean, what a double into the left middle. I mean, once again, I certainly know a person who would do that. But, I mean, to land himself perfectly on the black and get himself a real chance now. And as I say, talk about a reaction from Jackson Page. And it was a perfect reaction. You know, he wasn't risking anything from a double. He was very close in the end. And as he lands himself on the black now, only has 1 more red for him to deal with until he'll have to force the cue ball into the bunch. But still, it's better to have a slim chance than no chance at all. As now he's got a nice little angle on this black to try and hit the cue ball into the reds from the cushion. Could be another hour and a half left in this match. Alan is very slow nowadays too, though. Well, I mean, unfortunately, and I will say it with a little bit of irony there, but we are seeing a lot of the players that are playing slower actually get further in the tournaments. I mean, the players that you necessarily would sort of socialize and associate with being really quick on the front foot, are Neil Robertson, Judd Trump, as Jackson Page ran himself out of position and going for a shot of the red into the green pocket, misses it. Don't think he'll leave anything though, as he was always going to be aiming for the black there, so missed that one by some margin. And the break will end on 16 points there for him. Yeah, so Neil Robertson, Judd Trump, Kyron Wilson, Mark Williams, O'Sullivan Higgins didn't participate, Deng Junhui, I mean the list goes on, Chris Wakelin, anyone else that I missed? Wu Yize, Si Xiaowei, Zhao Xington. I mean the list goes on. All of those players are really attacking players. I mean tell me which one of those players is going to be taking pretty much nothing of the time in between the shots. Aaron Hill, he's a teenager. You can't really criticize him for doing that. He's not necessarily a teenager, but he's still very young on the tour. And he needs more time than the more experienced players. But Mark Selby, I mean, certainly not known for that. Jackson Page is not known for that, especially today. And to be fair, with what I've seen against Robertson and Murphy, I did expect him to be like that, but not from what I've seen. As we get a safety battle on our hands now, with safety being Selby's point of view probably the better chance of him winning this frame. And right now he lands Jackson Page in a difficult position. And yeah, Mark Cullen, I mean, talk about slow. He used to be an attacking player, but then he said, you know what, I'll change my style of play and I'm going to become really boring and try and grind out matches. Hasn't worked out for him last season, but to be fair, it has got him to his semi-final 2 weeks ago, and of course has got himself into the quarter-final here as well. And then who else have we got? Jack Jones, you obviously mentioned him being very slow there. And well, Watchalong is not going to be slow. Luca Brissell is not going to be slow, but one of them is out. One of them is through to the semi-finals. So, you know, Slesser is not necessarily the slowest, but he's also not the quickest there. With him not necessarily being, you know, the sort of top ranking players. I know he's done very well for himself and he's the world number 23, but he's not necessarily the likes of, you know, Williams, Higgins, Wilson, Trump to compare with. So he's always going to be a little bit on behind there. I am surprised to see so many Chinese players got knocked out in the last 16 and the last 32. I didn't expect that to happen. I mean, at that time, they almost had a full house there with Li Beifan, Zhang Anda, Si Xiaowei, Zhao Xington, and probably Ding Zhuwei. And I probably missed out quite a few as well. And all of a sudden, what is it? Are we having no Chinese players apart from Zhou Yulun, obviously being the first semi-finalist that has done very well for himself. You know, he's been off for 2 years off the tour after the ban that he received, but came back a couple of years ago and not necessarily found any sort of form last season, but starts off their Home Nations campaign nicely with a semi-final spot against one of those two players. Of course, which one we still yet to find out. I don't mind a slow tactical game. Roller, the ultimate slow man, but well down the ranking, not retired now. I think I haven't seen him, so I think he would have been retired. I think I've seen him participate in the senior matches because that name does ring a bell, but I get what you're saying. I probably will have to disagree with you on that point of view from me. Don't necessarily like watching a really slow player, especially if there's two of them. It just makes it a little bit of a hard watch there. You want the game to be played on the front foot by at least one of those. I get that if you're playing against Mark Selby, you have to be cautious. I get that if you're playing against, I don't know, sort of Mark Cullen, you have to be cautious. But I still don't want every single frame to be more than half an hour, simply because it'll take you 15 minutes to go through the early procedures of not taking the red on until one of you eventually will and make a mistake and open up the play. As something that Jackson Page has actually done there, so that was a good timing. As he makes a mistake into the left middle, and the red ball will stay out there. But good news for Page is Selby can't see any of that red, and probably even if he could, it wouldn't do too much of a damage, with the cue ball being on the top part of the table, and the red just being on the lower part of it. So once again, safety to follow up from Mark Selby. And we're still yet to see which one is he actually going to be. He has got a red on the right side cushion there he can try and take on, but in the end I think he'll just develop the red slightly onto the bunch and send the cue ball up towards the black ball area. I don't think he can afford to go for the bulk area with one of the reds being very close to the green spot there, and certainly is the colour that is the red that actually can be played into the same pocket there. But let's see, I understand sort of a tactical battle here with it being 3 frames each for the spot in the quarterfinal, but what I'm saying is I don't want every single frame to be like that, because I just don't think that you've got enough energy to try enough and see enough of the safety battle in between the two players that just keeps going, and doesn't seem to stop there. But Selby certainly has got something to say about it, and you'll play a red into the bunch and send the cue ball back towards the black ball area, you would have thought. Send it very close to the right middle and try and get the black in between the cue ball and a red that is actually quite close into the left middle as well. So let's see. And when I say I don't mind those battles, as long as they don't take forever, I mean, I don't mind it for now because I understand why it has to be done. But as I say, if it's going to be like that for the majority of the 3 remaining frames potentially that we're yet to witness, then I wouldn't necessarily be the biggest fan of it. But I can deal with it for now. As I can see, the table number 2 is already racked up and ready to go for one of the pairings. As I say, my prediction is it is Aaron Hill against Jack Jones there. And this time though, Mark Selby will have a chance into the right corner if he wants to take this red along the cushion, pretty much along the cushion. There's not necessarily too much room for him to try and take that red out of the game. And alternative for him is to try and take a red into the left corner there, underneath the main bunch, and try and play that one with a lot of power to get the cue ball somewhat safe towards the ball colours. In the end, he has managed to get the cue ball safe and actually land just below the green there to make the next shot very awkward for Page. But as you might have figured out, he missed the red into the corner. And net fair on the guys delayed for 7 start in the Worlds. This match would be stopped and they would come back after the 9th game has finished, after the 7th game has finished. Well, I actually like, and I actually agree with you on that, because I don't think it is Elias Lesser and Mark Allen's fault that those two have not managed to. But I suppose, you know what, I suppose you could say the same about them. They were scheduled to start at 2 o'clock and they had to start at something, what, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock there? Agree, Andrew, but this is what I'm saying. You can agree with that, but then you have to say the same about Joe Yolon and Luca Brissell. And then probably when you think about it, so it's not Selby's fault, it's not Page's fault that they're still playing here because they started 2 hours late. So who are you going to blame that on? You can't blame that on Elias Lesser and Mark Allen because they match haven't even started. And they're expected to start at 7. But then surely Mark Selby and Jackson Page should have started at 2 o'clock. With that logic. So you're blaming this one on Luca Brissell and Joe Yolon. Yeah, see that also. This is what I'm saying. Like, you can't try and make it. If it was a single match and that was the first match of the day, 100%. 100% stop the match and come back later. But because we are seeing first match delayed, therefore the second match is going to be delayed. And when the second match is being delayed, you can't really expect them to finish the match of 3 hours when the previous one has gone over 4 hours or something. So I think you'd be harsh on them. But I understand where you're coming from. But this is where I think, because it's a quarterfinal stage, we have been playing on 4 tables for the majority of the tournament. So why are we going back to 2 tables when it's quarterfinal? Surely go to 2 tables when it's semi-final. Or, you know, go into a single table when it's the final. I mean, I don't necessarily understand why You have to take 2 tables out of the equation when it's sort of 4 people playing here. 4 matches being played, I should say, with Selby getting a brilliant long shot into the right corner. Doesn't mean he's going to be on the colour though, and with his reaction he knew straight away there that it wasn't going to end on 1. And unless he takes the blue into the green pocket, which, to be fair, is dead ball anyway. There's no way you're going to get the cue ball onto the red from there. So, just a safety once again. And back to square one there. It's a tough one. They should use both tables for the... Yeah, this is what I'm saying. This is why I'm saying, why do we have 7 o'clock matches starting at the same time on 2 different tables, and yet we're having Watchalong and Luca Brussel starting in 2 hours in between? I mean, if you want to get all of the quarterfinals separately, don't put the 7 o'clock match alongside the other one, because people are never going to watch all 4 quarterfinals anyway. So I think you're confusing yourself there, with the Page having the cue ball being sent very close to the green pocket, but it's going to just stay out there. So I don't really understand the logic of why did we not start the first match at 10 o'clock? Tell me that. Every single stage of English Open this year has started at 10 o'clock. So why are we going into the quarterfinal stage where we know there's going to be 4 quarterfinals? We're putting the first match to start at 12 o'clock. Selby there, massive mistake. And Page will have a shot into the left corner now. So Selby not getting the best of his safety game now. And that could be an issue. And so why are we not having the first match start at 10 o'clock? Because the 2 hour that you're talking about in between starting at 10 o'clock or 12 o'clock, that will do the difference. Because the match between Watchalong and Luca Brussel has lasted just under 4 hours there. Why not do that? And then you can start the match between Page and Selby at 2 o'clock, no problem, and you'll comfortably finish before 7 o'clock. Page with a good shot there, but not good enough in terms of the cue ball control. Gets the red into the corner, but probably going to find himself playing a safety shot. So I think this one is probably on the people that organised and thought about this. You know. But let's see now. Let's get back to the action with the safety game finally being out of the way. You would have thought Page goes for an attacking shot on the pink. In the end, he'll miss it. And the attacking play will continue. But this time, it will be Mark Selby at the wheel. With Jackson Page being at his chair now. And it was a do or die shot, I'll be honest. It was one of those that you play when you're 4-0 down. I don't necessarily understand with him playing that. Would have been 3 frames each. But I suppose he probably had enough himself of the safety battle. And this is what Selby can do. He can just wear you down and make you go for those shots that are just going to frustrate you. And ultimately make you miss some of those. And as much as it's a little bit of a dirty tactic, it's still a tactic. And it's a tactic that works for Selby. Let's see how many points can he get now of the tactic that has actually put him into this position. And he gets the blue in. Is the standard as poor as it comes across in this match? It's a funny question, huh? And yes and no, I would say. I think the standard has been low, but it has been getting better as we were getting further into the match. I still think the reason why there wasn't too many misses since the interval, I will say that. The fifth frame was brilliant from Page in the end. The fifth frame was alright from Page. I wouldn't say it was brilliant. But Selby managed to do really well in the 6th frame. So 5th frame was alright. 6th frame was really good by Selby. And the 7th frame has started with a lot of safety play. And at the end of the day, you're forcing the players to go through such a battle with Mark Selby every single time that you're up against him, that I do get why Jackson Page has gone, I can't have another 30 minutes of a safety battle. So if I miss this ping, so be it. I get why, but it's not necessarily nice for him after you've been through such such a lengthy battle there. Not necessarily the nicest thing for you to try and do. To yourself first and foremost, but we'll see. I suppose, as I say, that's the strategy of Mark Selby. He won't get tired of playing a safety shot. Jackson Page will. Elias Lesser will. Mark Allen probably will as well, to an extent. I think he'll have probably the most time of those three, apart from Selby himself. And it's a tactic that Selby can try and use to wear you down in any sort of opponent against you. Once again, gets the pink in really nicely into the left middle. And with the standard being as poor, I wouldn't say it's poor. I would say it comes across as some mistakes, yes, but I still wouldn't say it's got less of a standard in play as than it was in the opening quarterfinal. I'd say it probably is on the verge of it being the same. I wouldn't really give an edge to either one for now. But the thing about the first quarterfinal, Watchalong has actually found a brilliant game at the end of it. And the problem for him was a very tough decider that, in the end, it has worked out that it was going to be a very, very long game. And it's never going to be pretty. They decided that it was. So I judge it off the 8 frames, not 9. And I'd probably say that these two matches have been, if not identical, then very similar to the way they've been played. There's pretty much nothing to separate between the two players. The lower seed has probably been ahead for more time in the match, but the higher seed has actually got his game to a better level, and he's got himself into a great situation right now, being at 18 points clear. He's about to make that 24 with the ping. Still 5 more reds available on the table, and Selby is looking to be in control now of this frame, and potentially of this match as well. Remember, 4-3 scoreline of Selby will put him ahead in the frame for the first time since the opening frame. That could be very important. Could be very important for Selby, because Jackson Page will certainly go for it, and it will be a scenario very similar to the one that Elias Lesser found himself in against Jump yesterday. Not yesterday. It may have been yesterday. Yeah, it was yesterday. When Trump was winning by 3 frames to 2, only needed 1 more frame against Lesser to win the whole thing. And in the end, Lesser gone for 2 really aggressive shots there and managed to win 2 frames from those 2 aggressive shots there. So, but he's made those 2 long shots and they were really difficult and it was really risky. Like, if you miss any one of those, you probably have Jump clear up the table. So that's probably the situation that Jackson Page will find himself, because Selby, I think he will know that in the frames 8 and 9, he will go for slowing the game down, taking it step by step, taking it shot by shot, and just trying to wear Jackson Page down. I mean, he's doing that right now to an extent, with still a lot of time, I think, to be played in this frame. Selby had a break of 46 there, so he's 30 points clear with, I think it is 59 that is on the table. Let me just double check the amount of points available. So yeah, it is 59 points on the table now, as it says on the graphic. So 3 reds are on the side cushion. The black has joined them as well, so I don't know how the black got there. And 1 more red is on the black ball cushion, a little bit closer to the left hand side of the table. So there's your answer, and there's your variable. Let's see what the constant is going to be now, with Selby probably going for the red on the black ball cushion, trying to send it towards the bunch and get the cue ball in and around those. So nice shot there from Selby. In the end, you want the position to be as close as possible, and exactly the opposite of Jackson Page would like to see. And we'll see now. As I say, he's not lost this frame yet, Jackson Page, but certainly quite close to doing that, especially if Selby will get another chance of any of those reds. I think if he takes them out one by one, he probably is just about at the stage of the match that he can try and do that. It's 4 reds on the table. If you take 3 of them out and you take a colour with them, all of a sudden it's a frame ball. So, as I say, it's not necessarily the worst tactic in the world for Selby to try and perform. but he needs to get anywhere near those reds. For now, he's not even close to those. And he can try and go for a cross double now. On to send the red onto the right hand side of the table. And he's going to be good with that. Once again, goes down for the shot and needs to make sure that the cue ball will be safe in towards all the colours. In the end, he's gone for a shot into the corner pocket, and when I say he's got a chance to take those reds out one by one, not necessarily something that I meant there, that he had to go for shots like that with the cue ball being on the cushion. I mean, realistically, I don't think he was ever going to make this red in. I get that if he does, he puts him in a much better situation than he already is. And I suppose you probably can understand why he's gone for the shot, and especially with him being, not necessarily so much on the front foot so many times, but the three remaining reds, as Page dispatches this one into the corner, are still covered up on the left-hand side of the table. So there's not any chance for now that Page can get through to those. Something that I think he'll be working towards right now. So sending the cue ball into the reds there, but misses the blue, and what a mistake that could be. I mean, if Selby can get through to that red into... Well, he certainly can't do that in the right middle, so it's not really any pocket for him to go. I mean, the problem for Page is he is 29 points behind, so he can't really afford to be just taking out reds without colours here, because that will put Selby in a much better position to only need one of those reds, and all of a sudden, get a red and a colour, you're Gucci. And you've got a 4-3 lead now. So right now it is still 29 points, the difference between the two of them. Still 51 on the table, so it looks like he's comfortably alright now, Page. But as I say, if he was to take out two more of those reds, all of a sudden the last red is on the table. It's a frame ball for Selby. So he needs to be careful with those types of shots. For now, Selby will send one of those reds on towards the right side cushion, but it won't reach there. And it probably is the position for Page to try and use the same red, get it into the open play. And for now, he'll have a red to play along the cushion and send the cue ball down to the black ball zone if he wants to. Maybe even try and land in behind the black, but what a mistake that is. I mean, he's had the idea of me there, but he's underrun for the black, and he's basically left the red over the yellow pocket for Selby. And what a mistake this could be. And, you go back to that blue miss. If he makes that blue, the trajectory of the cue ball would have been different, and it would have been a better chance for him to try and make that red position. And instead, it is going to be Mark Selby running away with it in the 7th frame, surely closing it off now, being 30 points clear. The next red and colour combination will close off the frame ball debate for Mark Selby. As for now, he's got a straightforward grain into the pocket, screw back for the red into the middle pocket, and this time though, all the reds are actually in an available position. So had it been Selby that made that mistake, it would have been Page with a clearance to see. Instead, it is going to be Mark Selby with not even a clearance there, but just 10 points or so that he'll get him over the line. Now 34 points clear, still 35 on the table, so the blue will get him past the frame ball zone, and one more red will surely make sure that Page won't be coming back to the table in this particular frame, as Selby only a couple of shots away from doing that. Gets the pink in, lovely little angle for himself on the red into the left middle, and looks like it is framed for Selby. And just roll this one in, no messing around, and certainly will do that. And talk about no messing around, I mean, Jackson Page was leading by 3 frames to 2. He's now lost 2 frames on the bounce there. How significant that could be for him, as it is now only 1 frame area for Mark Selby, and that's all he needs there. 1 frame will make it. the best out of Mark Selby and potentially get himself booked into a semi-final clash with Watchalong. I mean, as I said that before this match has even started, what a clash this would be. Watchalong against Mark Selby. I mean, that is basically like David against Goliath there, with two completely different styles clashing. But I mean, for now, Selby will have a cue ball to travel a long distance there onto the pink. So a little bit of entertainment and a little bit of showing off there, getting himself a bit of table time. But lovely to see that from Selby, you know, getting control of the cue ball finally towards the later stages of the frames. And he's now, for the first time since the opening frame, finds himself ahead in his battle against Jackson Page. And it is now match frame for Mark Selby. Mark Selby 4, Jackson Page 3. And we do indeed have got a first, not the first, the third semi-final underway, quarter-final. Can't have the third semi-final. Jack Jones is up against Aaron Hill there, with Aaron Hill already being one frame ahead now of Jack Jones. So that one's had a quick start. You know, 18 minutes in when we're already going into the second frame there. So we'll see. GG's in this frame, certainly GG's. We'll see what will happen in frame number 8. Is looking forward to see more action from Selby's point of view. And let's see if Jackson Page got what it takes to answer and have something to say of himself. For now, as I say, haven't seen anything that would have made me feel like, you know, it was a brilliant performance from Jackson Page. It was at the start of the frame, and it was at the start of the campaign, but ever since, you know, it has gone a little bit downhill for him. And, you know, more mistakes creeping in. Selby finally getting the best out of his game, as Mark will go for a little bathroom break. The referee is just finishing up with all the colours. And yeah, so looking forward to see the way the 8th frame will pan out. As I say, now, of course, you will have to go for Selby. And whoever did say, I think it was Andrew actually, that said that if you have to place a bet on either one of those, with it being 3-2 advantage Jackson Page, you may as well be Selby, because at that point it was identical odds. And I actually said it was going to be Page that was going to be the favourite for me, because I thought that frame advantage was going to be the key difference. So not necessarily got the most out of those. But to be fair, before this match I did say, I didn't put it in the chat though, but you can go back and watch it. I did say that it was going to be Selby to win this quarterfinal with the scoreline of 5 frames to 3. Still very much possible. And Jackson Page there sleeping in his chair, still waiting for Mark Selby to come back to the action. And yeah, finds himself in this situation for the first time now in this tournament. You know, it was him that was actually putting all the pressure and horror on his opponents, being higher ranking seeds in the tournament. All of a sudden, he has to find himself, well, being very, very close to elimination and out of the tournament at the quarter-final stage. Of course, still will get 14 and a bit ranking, 1,000 of ranking points and prize money to his name, but of course we'll know that he is only 2 frames away from multiplying that by, well, at least 50%. And Mark Selby will get the 8th frame underway here after he comes back from the bathroom break. So now, it is massive advantage Mark Selby, and it is also the frame that could still prove to be the last one in this clashing between the two players. Is Selby there with a nice little break-off shot. Get the frame underway. I hope Page comes back. I said might be another hour and a half before last frame. That must have been 30-minute frame. Come on, Page, let's have a decider. Well, let's see now. Let's see. Page is certainly going for the red into the left corner. He makes it. And I was telling you about Elias Slesser and Judd Trump there, although Slesser did manage to land on the colour, Page didn't. So there's the comparison gone straight away. But it was a brilliant shot there from Page. One of those do or die shots that you have to make. And if you don't make, you probably leave a red onto the similar corner. But didn't judge the pace of the cue ball perfectly. And in the end, we'll have either a yellow to play into the right middle, or just to send the cue ball in behind one of those colors and settle for whatever is on the table for him. Let's see now, what can he make out of this situation? He does put the yellow in, but I don't think we're going to get any further than that, with him catching the brown pretty significantly there on the cue ball. And I don't think he can see past the blue there to get on the red into the left corner. So let's see what this red is going to bring to Jackson Page here. And nothing is the answer, really. Didn't really consider the red into the right corner, but it may still be a mistake there, because he left potentially same red away now to Mark Selby, and has to be careful with those type of shots that he takes on. You know, he has put the black and the pink out of the game, which is probably going to frustrate him even more there, but he's also left the red on for Selby to try and take on. Let's see if he will. He will, and he'll miss it, so no damage done to himself yet. And also, Jackson Page is going to come back to the table with a clear shot in mind now. Can he drag the cue ball into the black and the pink there? Because if he can, and he does actually manage to pot the red, he'll be in with a great chance, but he doesn't even consider it. So obviously there was no way for him to try and get onto the color, with the red actually being very, very easy for him to try and pot. But the angle was always going to have the cue ball going into the reds there, and not into the bunch of the black and the pink. So has to wait for a better chance there, Selby. And just play... no, not Selby, actually Jackson Page there. But in the end, we'll still put Selby under a little bit of scrutiny, as Selby there goes for a shot off the cushion and catches one of those reds comfortably. Puts it even deeper into the bunch. Nice shot there from Selby. And let's see what Page shot selection is going to be now. For now, nothing that, nothing extraordinary with that we can see in the current stage of the match. But I would like to see this 8th frame to get underway quicker than the previous one. And Page was trying to free up the black there, but instead he's actually sent the black up the table. And I think it might actually be the last that we hear of the black color in this frame, maybe in this match here, because Mark Selby is the player that can get the cue ball in and around the pink and blue there. And right now he has got a red to try and take on, but he'll miss it by some margin. And is he going to give the same red away now to Jackson Page? The answer is no. Has he given any other reds away? Potentially one into the right corner. But that's a really difficult cut for Jackson Page to try and take on. And once again on the replay, you can see Selby missed the red by quite a mile there. And Page won't miss his red. So, whoever said it was going to be decider, in fact, I know it's going to be Andrew that said it was going to be decider. It's not looking too bad now, although it would have been looking better had Page actually landed on any of the colours perfectly. Has got a yellow to try and stun the cue ball and land himself for a red into the right middle though, onto the top part of the table. In the end, he won't even consider that. He'll use the yellow, but he'll try to bring the cue ball up to the bottom part of the table. And to be fair, talking about the decider probably is a little bit early now, with the Page still being so early on the break. And has got a red to try and play into the right corner. In the end, he is going to be on the colour, but where's the next red that he's aiming for is the question, because all of them are either bunched up or very close to the cushion there. So Page will play this blue now and try and get himself for the red onto the right middle, but that's not going to happen either. And the Page comeback looking to end on the break of just 9 points here. As it's still not over for him, but it's not necessarily the start to the frame that he would have liked. And thought about a double, but obviously not going to play that. And just send the cue ball in behind the green. Once again, force Selby to try and take the escape route and potentially use the cushion first to go into the bunch of reds. And let's see there. The page comeback is still on the horizon. But not looking likely right now or in the any next of the couple of shots. Selby has got a shot into the cushion to try and take on. And from there, the cue ball will lead onto the back of reds. But the question is, from which side does he want to try and catch any of those reds? With him, I think, aiming for quite a significant gap there in between any of those two. In the end, he has gone for a red along the cushion, you would have thought, but still misses that one. And of course, it was a plan all along that I didn't recognize in the first place. I thought he was trying to go for a cross double on the red on the left hand side. In the end, he was just trying to catch the bunch there from two cushions. And once again, back to Selby goes. And well, I mean, the fact that commentators and the broadcast are actually concentrating their attention on this shot as well is probably a sign that it wasn't only me that thought that. And for now, it is Selby once again sending one of those reds towards the lower part of the table. Not going to be too happy with himself though, as he catches the yellow full ball. And yellow basically going towards the left middle pocket, and red there taking his spot. So Jackson Page tried to play that one into the middle, caught the yellow on the way in, and got the cue ball safe, which is one piece of good news that he's actually can say to himself. Nothing on top of that though, as once again a shot potentially lined up for Mark Selby into the right corner. We'll see the cue ball being sent towards the safe area and on towards the ball colours. So can try and go for the other pocket as well, into the left corner, and try and send it as close as possible to that. But in the end, it was always going to be too thin of a cut for him to try and do. So goes for a safety shot and doesn't even think about the potential potting angle. So something that I expected Selby to go for in this frame number 8, but something that I actually am very surprised to see Page following the script off. You know, he did have a couple of chances to go heavily into the reds and didn't. So he thinks he can try and outsmart Selby in the safety play. Let's see if that's going to happen with... I actually don't think he's managed to do that throughout the entire match here still. And we'll see if that's going to be the first time of asking. And no is the answer. So I can almost see that one coming. When you try and beat a lion at a lion's game, you're going to lose. That's a quote I just made up, but it works. He sent a cross double there, down the table into the right hand side, and he caught one of those reds along the cushion, sent it towards the pocket, and basically it's a free shot for Mark Selby to try and land himself on any of the colours available. In the end, it will be either brown or yellow, and does it nicely there, Selby. So, in terms of reds, what have we got available for Mark Selby here? I think we've got one available into the right corner, and that's for sure, but also he can try and go into the bunch quite soon though, with so many of those reds already being taken out of the equation, you know, at least 5 or so, with just the majority of them being spread out below the pink spot. And let's see, with the yellow going back on his spot there, so some sort of table clearance is on here for Selby, but surely after this red he'll try and line himself up for the shot on the blue and try and catch the left hand side of the pack there to avoid the pink and go heavily into those reds. Unless you're lying, you're getting it. This is what I'm saying. I've never seen anyone in the quarterfinal trying to outsmart Mark Selby in a safety game. Like, I understand when you try to, but Jackson Page was playing attacking style in the 7th and 6th frames. He lost those. So after losing those while playing his style of play, he decided, well, you know what? If I can't do it the attacking way, I'll take it to Mark Selby, who is one of the best, if not the best player on tour in the safety side of things. And by the way, Selby there just got a little bit unlucky. He's gone into the reds quite nicely. but in the end didn't land on any one of those. So as we've got 5 reds eliminated from the table, we've still got 10 more in the action here, and doesn't look like Mark Selby can get through to any one of those, unless he can get through to that one on the right hand side of the table. No, he can't. He was always going to be playing a safety off one of the other ones, and catches the safety in a decent way, but still allows Page to see enough of the red to try and play it into the right corner. So let's see. As I say, it's chapter 3 now of frame number 8. You know, Page had a chance, Selby had a chance. He's going to have the next chance here with the... Inevitably, the less reds you've got on the table, the more chance you actually have got of messing up the positional side of play. You've got the pink being freed up nicely. You've got the blue being freed up nicely, and you've got Jackson Page missing the shot into the right corner, but still getting the cue ball somewhat safe. Now, has refused these types of shot before, Selby. Is he going to refuse it again? Right corner with the cue ball being sent towards the brown spot. Can try and land himself up for the brown, with the black being in the mix there as well. Let's see. He's looking for a potential plant there to try and take on. But in the end, doesn't look like it is the plant that he wants to actually do something with. He's checking if he's going to give anything away to his opponent. So let's see now. He's taking a red on that I was talking about. Is he going to make it though? And he hasn't even taken it for a long pot. So he did take it on for a safety shot, but nothing much after that. In the end, it's a good cue ball control. And it's back to Jackson Page for an answer. Talk about, you know, a lengthy 8th frame, as I say. Did expect a lot more from Page in terms of the attacking side of things. Of course, nothing from this shot, as there's nothing available, you would have thought. But although he has found some sort of something, and in the end has actually landed the cue ball really, really nicely for himself as well there. So, you know, it wasn't easy, but he's gone for a plant that Selby was actually looking at. So that's why I was looking at, but he's missed it by quite some margin. So that's why probably Selby has allowed himself to keep it there, potentially as a bait there for Jackson Page. And in the end, Selby now has got a semi-difficult safety shot to face himself with. No, it's not going to be easy. In fact, it's going to be far from easy, with so much distance between the red that he's actually going to target and the cue ball. And once again, so went down to hit their shot twice already, gone back up already 2 times as well. And as I say, very important shot now for Selby, and very important for him to try and make the most out of the position that he gets himself in. And how's the cue ball positioning? Looks like he was going to go in behind the yellow. In the end, he won't. And what he will do is give a chance to Jackson Page here onto the right corner, potentially into the right middle as well. But he's not even looking at the middle option, so clearly not on for him. The right corner shot is certainly on, and surely this is going to be the one he takes on. And he will pot it, and he'll get himself onto a blue as well. So it is first chance now in 8th. Well, first chance. It's the second chance now for Jackson Page in this 8th frame. And it's certainly a first chance for a while that we've had in between either one of those 2 players. And straight away there, Page is not going to be too happy with himself. Overlands for the next available red, and only has 1 more into the right corner, into the right middle that you can try and take on, but has to bridge over a pink there. So that's not going to be easy. And let's see. Which shot is he going to take on? You can still try and go for the red into the left middle, but I think with the black not being there, not being on the spot, there's no real value in taking that red on. So it could have been a match-ending chance for Mark Selby. What it could actually turn into is a match equaling chance, and a decider forcing chance for Jackson Page if he makes the most out of this position. But one thing I will say about Jackson Page, I don't really see any sort of passion from him. And he plays like he's not bothered. I'll be honest, he just played 2 shots there from the blue into the reds twice. And I don't think he found himself lucky on this time of asking. Can he get through to this red? Probably just about can, as match time reaches 3 hours. So certainly not been a very quick one. And he just about can get through that red, so gets away with once again. But as I say, don't really see any sort of care in those types of shots. And it's never a good sign to see that from a snooker player, especially at this stage of the match. But he survives for now, and he's on 31 points as well. So this red will disappear into the left middle, and Page will try and play that one away onto the pink into the right middle. So now he's ahead by 26 points, 75 on the table. So if he eliminates those 3 reds available to him, maybe one more on the left-hand side, should be a way for a decider here. And for now, he needs to put this pink into the right middle. He does. How's the cue ball positioning? It's not perfect, but it's not bad. It's not bad, I suppose. It is still possible into both the left middle and the left corner. Not too sure which shot you actually go for. Go for the left corner, probably understandable in terms of actually getting the red in. Going to be a little bit more careful in terms of the pace of the cue ball to land himself nicely on the pink, which he will. So it is now looking like we are going to see a decider between Jackson Page and Mark Selby. Still a couple of shots for that to happen. As probably once again the right outcome. I don't think either of the players has played too well here to win by 5 frames to 3. And was the scoreline that I predicted Selby to win it by. But in the end of it, oh my, to be a brilliant predictor here. Now 40 points clear with 59 on the table, so those points on the table disappearing here very quickly for Mark Selby. 46 now with his pink. So the next pink will be a frame ball and a decider making frame ball here for Jackson Page. I didn't expect this straight away, and I have to put my hands up and say, well done Jackson Page here, because for him to lose 2 frames on the bounce there, and Selby, we only 1 frame away from victory. I thought it was going to be a really tough ask for him to do it, but he is now away with a frame ball, and 1 more red to roll through, just to ensure that we won't see any more of Mark Selby until the decider, and we won't. So 54 points of a gap, 43 on the table, and all to play for. I mean, advantage no one. Game, I mean, it certainly is game, but is it going to be game and match Jackson Page, or is it going to be game and match Mark Selby? We have to find out. With 60 points now in between the 2 players, and Jackson Page was almost ready there for a safety battle, but in the end, we will go for a quick bathroom break. Well, I mean, I say we, the players will. I'm not necessarily going to. I thought I cancelled everything. That's why cancellation is gone. I've got a button there on the score sheet to just reset everything, and thank God the undo button has worked on that. So it is now Jackson Page 4, Mark Selby 4, and it's everything to play for really in the decider, and it's the one that we are looking forward to the most. And probably, as I say, both players have deserved it. It was a 2-2 draw after the opening session, and it is 4-4 after the opening 8 frames played. And as we have a look at the other table, how the action is going between Aaron Hill and Jack Jones. Seems to be Jack Jones there on the table currently. And he's actually managed to win the second frame. So with 41 minutes gone there, it is 3rd frame underway, and him actually having a decent chance of winning that 3rd frame, already being 16 points clear, and currently on the break as well. But all eyes are going to be on the table number 1, and the clash between Mark Selby and Jackson Page here. Anyone's now. It is definitely anyone's now. And the thing that I will say, we will do a little match overview about this one as well. I've got the notes in ready that I've prepared after the intermission. I think we are going to see a battle of a safety, and it's all going to be about who's going to blink first, who's going to make the first mistake, and once the first mistake is made, can the other player try and actually make the most out of this mistake? And if he can, sweet. And if not, we'll be in for a very, very long decider, but certainly the one that hopefully will entertain all of us. As once again we see the handshake between the players, and it's all to play for. And it is Jackson Page that will break off now for the final frames to start, get it underway, and certainly have it all to play for. Really looking forward to see what's going to happen in between the two players, as the referee will just wait a couple of more seconds there to allow Jackson Page to break off. And here we go. Once again, frame number 9 will start off. And it's a nice break off from Jackson Page. It is. But it's the one that presents a chance to Mark Selby straight away. Is he going to try and take it on now? Here's the question. I think he probably will, with him going and having a look at the position of the black there. I think he can certainly try and do that now. But this time, it's the first time actually you could say about Mark Selby, he cannot afford a mistake. He could afford a mistake in the previous frame, but not in this time. Jackson Page is the man coming into this match on form. And let's see. Selby will take this red into the corner. I have a feeling he might miss it. But he makes it. So shut up you. Shut up the host. And go back to washing up there, because that's a really nice shot there from Selby. And he is on the brown into the middle. So he has missed those shots before, but in the end doing that one when it counts. Let's see, can he make anything out of this position? I think he'll play for this brown, you know. And he's certainly not going to try and roll in behind this one. Plays this one with power. Gets it into the middle. And lines himself up for a red into the right corner. Has had almost 100 more points there. And 4 more percentage of the pot success. Mark Selby in terms of advantage over Jackson Page there. And highest break, as you can see, 111 to Mark Selby. And only 62 for Jackson Page there. So once again, another beautiful red for Selby to try and pot. And, you know, we didn't have a safety battle on our hands in the opening stage of it. We still might do in the future. But right now it is Selby on the break. Has got green now to follow up in its own spot. And its own pocket. So the screw back on the cue ball. Try and line himself up for a red into the right corner. I think that's going to be the prime decision for Selby to try and take on here. Try and apply a lot of power this time on the cue ball. And get himself down the table. Once again, really nice shot there. And cueing has been sublime from Selby, especially in the last couple of frames. Which is why I was surprised at him actually losing the frame number 8. But maybe it was all saving up for this frame. And turning up when he counts. Certainly turned up with the long shot. Gave himself a chance of a break. And now, the only thing that he has to do to get himself the second semi-finalist of today's and this year's English Open is get this break utilized in the best possible manner. Now it's got an angle on this black that is not necessarily going to be very pot friendly. Needs to roll this one in and hope that the black will stick for one of those reds into the corner. He will. So 17 points, and Selby trying to build those points. And remember the thing that I said after the mid-session interval. Every single time one of the player has had a brilliant break at the start of it, even if it was a value of 30-40, they did go on to win a frame every single time after it. So let's see if that's going to happen in Decider. For now, Mark Selby's yet to actually make that break that I would consider to be, well, considerable really. And, you know, serious in terms of a decider value. Still 115 points on the table, so a lot of those chances will be given to Jackson Page. And I certainly don't think he's out of this yet. But it's certainly out of his control for now. With, you know, Selby managed to produce a century from a similar sort of position. You'll go into the reds right now. And oh my word, what a shot is that. I mean, if that's not shot of the match, I don't know what is. A brilliant split there. Caught the pink perfectly right in the face there. And the cue ball has landed perfectly on one of those reds. And I mean, if you are into the odds, it is Mark Selby's frame to lose. And if he just takes his time, if he nails the positional play, I will be absolutely stunned if he actually allows Jackson Page one more chance. I know a couple of shots ago I'd still say he'll probably get another chance, but after a split like this, it's very difficult for you to say you can hope for something, Jackson, because I don't think he can. And I certainly think that Mark Selby can hope for anything that he wants. Right now, he's got a rest shot to try and get the pink into the left corner. Will put him 30 points clear. And a little bit of topspin can try and land the cue ball on either right middle or right corner there. In the end, he decided to screw back there. So, bulk short selection. And in the end, he's going to be 30 points clear. Still very much in control of the position and the cue ball as well. Has got a red lined up very easily into the left corner, but compromised slightly by the fact he has to bridge over another red. And those are the shots that he has to be clinical and perfect in. And recovers nicely. And once again, I mean, infinite amount of reds can be potted into either left or right corner there. I mean, if you're Jackson Page, I really don't know what you're hoping for here. Miscue, positional mistake, taking off the pot, whatever it is, it's not looking good for you, and it's certainly looking good for Mark Selby, with all of these reds being available for you to try and pot those. Right now, it's 38 points clear for Selby. And once again, we'll roll the red through, and the cue ball will follow up with it into the left corner. Or you can also go for a red into the right corner and send it for either blue or black there. Depends on what he wants. I think he'll go for the right corner and send it for the blue. And nicely into the pocket there. Wants to be the top side of the blue, and certainly will be. So once again, still in control of the position, and 91 points available. As he takes those out one by one, those reds. He just frees himself up with a better position to try and finish off now. And it's looking very, very nicely for Mark Selby, despite losing 8th frame there. And he's now scoreline of 4 frames to 4 and 44 points for Mark Selby. I mean, certainly making a wish right now to win the frame. And with it, the entire match, and make himself the semi-finalist, but runs a little bit short there on the black. So needs a good shot this time. Will go into the reds inevitably. Probably is bound to end up on at least one of those. But needs to make sure the black is in first. And it's one of those that it's almost margin off for you not to take it on, but can't afford to do that. Can't afford to let your position back in this break. So now very important shot to try and recover himself after scrutinizing slightly. The black will go into the corner pocket, but easy on the red there. Or does he have to take one into the cushion? And with the face drop, it is looking like, yeah, he just scratched the red there. I was looking at the black there, but he's got one of those reds on the side of it where he wanted to catch a full ball. In the end, it was all about putting the black in, but what do you do from here? Do you go for the red along the cushion? Surely not. I mean, sure, he is. He is going for the red. I mean, is that going to be one shot too many for him to try and take on? And just about drops in. I think his heart would have been dropping as well. It did the little wobble, and I was waiting for it to stay out there, but in the end, it just about did there. So a couple of seconds, it wobbled in the jaw, but in the end dropped, and you can see that on the replay with the slow-mo. And well, I mean, that probably was the pot there, and the only chance for Jackson Page to be back in this frame right now. A couple of easy reds, you would have thought, for Selby. And he is going to take this one away from Jackson Page and make himself the second semi-finalist. One more red now into the right corner. Only 67 available now, so the next thread is going to be a frame ball, and that frame ball will leave Jackson Page needing 2 snookers. So it looks like it is. Well, let's see now. I was going to say it is GG's, but it's not yet there. And Selby lines himself perfectly on this frame ball. Well, I mean, I've seen him miss one of those, to be fair. So let's not celebrate until it's over. Just roll this one through. And it is there. So it is there. And it is Selby in the semi-final, surely now. Because you're not coming back from this, and it is GG's. And it was a decider. Jackson Page has put up a really good fight there, but in the end has to come up short. And his battle and his pursuit of Mark Selby. And finally now, after the frame and the match is over, can we finish off on a nice little century break for Mark Selby to wrap it off here in style. It almost has been 4 hours since this match has started as well. So, break of 75 now for Mark Selby, landing once again a little bit awkwardly on this black. Doesn't necessarily have to worry about it too much now. And yeah, so century unlikely to happen with him facing a difficult cut into the right corner. He can still try and do that with the rest. There's no real pressure on him now. So going to be a lot of relief there. So certainly GG's there. And Selby is through to the semi-final. And as I say, an absolute clash of chaos is going to be here tomorrow. As Selby just about drops the red in. So the red obviously knew the script and realised that, you know what, the frame ain't going to matter. So I may as well just drop in and give the fans a potential century break. I'm not saying anything more. But once again, Selby needs to put this black with a difficult angle. Get the cue ball into those reds. And he does. So brilliant shot there. And only 4 shots away now from making it a second century break. And of course, what a way to do that. From the first time we've seen a frame that was won in a single visit to the table. And what a way to do that in a decider. I did say it was going to be Selby to win it. But in the end, what a way to do it. And certainly the cue of steel there for him. Now, 2 more shots for the century break. The one that we're very much anticipating here. And the blue ball to just roll into the left middle and make it a potential highest break of the match as well. But ultimately a second century break to end on a high for Mark Selby. And he certainly will do that. And it is a brilliant performance in the end of the day for Mark Selby. He can still try and go for a 1-3-1 clearance. And brilliant performance. And certainly the one that he would have much anticipated in the final frame against Jackson Page. And commiserations to him. He's played his part. And in the end, only one man can win here. And Mark Selby is the man to do that. You have to feel, though, for Jackson Page, him having a break-off as his last shot in the match is a bit cruel. But this is what you're up against. Quality, majority of the time, will prevail over you. And it is all about being the best that you can be. And it's certainly something that Mark Selby has managed to produce in the deciding frame. As we now just wait for the final potential total clearance. As Selby still wants to entertain the fans and send the cue ball to travel. A little bit of mileage. Almost perfect on the black here to probably double or do something into the corner pocket. No, just rolls that one in. And will make a total clearance of 131 points. Jackson Page offers his hands to congratulate him. And a brilliant performance there for him. As it is Mark Selby to win and wrap it off there. So Jackson Page certainly with a lot of warmth for himself. But it is Mark Selby 5 and Jackson Page 4. As I promised, we're going to go through those frames one by one. And what a way to start than the opening frame. I mean, what a frame that was. And the fact that Mark Selby has managed to win that frame, it was really important for him because Jackson Page has had 3 early chances that he only managed to get the reds in. He kept messing up the positional side of view and he didn't manage to land on any of the colours at all for the start. Then he got himself a decent break of 25 and then Mark Selby stepped up. And Mark Selby stepped up to have a break of 37 that didn't look like it was significant. But still, he got him over the line in the first frame. Then it was 2 frames on the bounce for Jackson Page, which was important, no worries about, no doubt about it. But ultimately, the fact that Selby managed to win the opening frame when he wasn't playing well, with Jackson deserved to win the second and third frame. But my point is Selby coming back from being 2-1 down? Yes. Is he coming back from being 3-0 down? No. And that's the point for me. When Jackson managed to win the second and third frame, I did think Selby was on the receiving end of it until he came out in the fourth frame and he pretty much produced a flawless break. He had a little bit of a mistake on the blue there straight away, so Snooker himself. But straight away he managed to recover, produce a break of, I think it was 65 to that 60 of that point. It was the highest one that Selby has managed to do in the opening 4 frames, and get himself level until the interval. So very, very nice for his point of view. Then 5th frame, Jackson Page comes off after the interval. Selby makes a couple of those errors. He gets the 5th frame in. Selby manages to get himself ahead for the first time since the opening frame, and get himself ahead in the 7th frame. So Jackson Page winning 2 frames on the bounce until the interval. Then the interval comes, Page wins 1 more frame, and Selby has to respond with 2 frames on the bounce for him. All of a sudden you think 3-4 in favour of Selby with a brilliant century break as well. For the first time finally we're seeing a break of above 65 in the match, and still Jackson Page ultimately has to finish off with the highest break of his being 62. Really, you have to say and you have to analyse, it's not really good enough. From a player like Jackson Page there, it's not good enough. From the performance that he produced against the likes of Murphy, Robertson, he's produced some century breaks there. He didn't manage to do that today though, and ultimately he did manage to force a decider, so fair play to him in doing that. He went for a shot earlier on in the 8th frame that I did have to say he will have to go for. He missed a positional shot, and he's given away chance to Selby that Selby didn't convert in the 8th frame, and Page managed to win the frame in 2 visits to the table. We didn't even see any snooker pursuit from Selby, but then a really cruel way to end it, but it was a break-off shot from Jackson Page, and Mark Selby managed to get himself away with a long shot into the left corner, land perfectly on the black there, and the rest was history. A break of 131 in a decider. I mean, if there ever was a perfect frame to round it all off, it was this one from Mark Selby, and it certainly deserved win. It's a little bit of a shame to see Jackson Page crash out of the tournament, but at the end it probably was one high seed for him too many to beat there, and we will see Mark Selby against Watchalong yesterday. Very much looking forward to that action, and if you want to tune into that, feel free to do so. So subscribe to the channel, hit the like button on your way out. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you with more action certainly of Hull Nations tournament still being in progress, of semi-finals tomorrow, and of course the final on Sunday. Can't miss that. Speak to you later though. See you later.